Chapter 1420. Cough cough. Right then, a series of soft coughs sounded from the dust not far away. A figure crawled out of the shattered pit slowly, covered in dust and looking wretched. It was the half-martial ancestor expert, Elder Hui Xing, who was suppressed by Su Zimo just now. Hui Shun, put away that talisman. There's no need to alarm the patriarch. Elder Hui Xing shook his head. Abbot Hui Shun hesitated for a moment before putting the talisman into his storage bag. However, he was still wary, as though he could take it out at any moment. Elder Hui Xing looked at Su Zimo and said, "Araki Takeshi, I didn't want to alarm the patriarch to kill you on account that you want to establish a Dao for the common people. However, you have to remember that you inherited Daming Monastery and Fahua Monastery, and are considered half a disciple of the Buddhist monasteries. That's precisely the reason why I held back," Su Zimo said indifferently. "Otherwise, do you think that any of these people who attacked me just now, including you, would be able to survive?" Su Zimo had always been decisive in killing. However, this time round, even though he was surrounded, and even used a half-martial ancestor expert to bully the weak, he held back and did not kill. Just now, although the battle was intense, none of the monks of Dapamkara Monastery died. Even Monk Kongru, who provoked him first, was only knocked unconscious by Su Zimo's shout, and was not in danger. The monks looked at each other in silence. They knew very well that given Araki Takeshi's former reputation, it was already rare for him to be able to control himself so well in his rage. How many Dharma Daojun and conjoint body mighty figures of the sects and factions that went against Araki Takeshi in the Battle of Heaven and Earth Valley? Abbot Huishin could not help but say, "Even so, you can't be unreasonable and barge into our monastery." "Fufu." Su Zimo laughed and shook his head. "I did not cross the line when I came to pay my respects. I waited outside Dapamkara Monastery for 6 hours, but you guys did not respond." The monks fell silent. "I wanted to go up the mountain to reason with you, but you stopped me, refused to see me, and even attacked me." Su Zimo had a mocking look on his face as he said, "Look at you now. You've already made your move. You can't beat me, but you want to reason with me? You." Abbot Huishin was momentarily at a loss for words. He was actually blushing from Su Zimo's words, feeling extremely ashamed. "I only have one question. Where is Mingzhen?" Su Zimo's burning gaze landed on Abbot Huishin and the others as he said slowly, "Mingzhen was still a titular disciple at the Dao Inheritance Ground. When was his title snatched away?" After pausing for a moment, Su Zimo hesitated for a long time. Finally he gritted his teeth and asked, "Mingzhen, is he dead or alive?" The monks were silent, not saying a word. Abbot Huishin said awkwardly, "Benefactor Araki Takeshi, monks don't lie. Mingzhen is indeed not in the temple. He has already left." "Where did he go?" Su Zimo asked immediately. Abbot Huishin wanted to say something but hesitated. Su Zimo's heart sank. He had already sensed that something was amiss and said sternly, "Give me an answer as to whether Mingzhen is dead or alive." Heis. Beside him, Elder Huixing sighed and said, "Mingzhen should already be dead." Although he was prepared for this, Su Zimo still felt a sense of sorrow when he heard Elder Huixing say it. He could not help but recall the young monk with clear eyes and pure thoughts, who was devoted to Buddhism at the bottom of the Dragon Burial Valley. A voice seemed to sound in his ears. "Ming Xian, I'm your senior brother from now on." In the Dao Inheritance Ground, the young monk held a green lamp and came forward without hesitation to fight alongside him. But now, after Elder Huixing's words, everything that had happened in the past had turned into bubbles. "Tell me what's going on." Su Zimo stood still for a long time before calming down. He took a deep breath and asked slowly, "We'll have to start from 10 years ago." Elder Huixing revealed a reminiscing expression. "About 10 years ago, cultivators of Southern Dual Sect discovered an utmost treasure near the sect." Southern Dual Sect. Su Zimo's expression changed. Southern Dual Sect was one of the 108 upper sects. Back when he first entered the intermediate ancient battlefield, he encountered cultivators of Southern Dual Sect. He vaguely remembered that one of them was a female cultivator named Tang Shiyin. Just as he was pondering, he heard Elder Huixing continue, That supreme treasure is a large piece of carefree wood. Su Zimo's heart skipped a beat. It was the carefree wood. Monk Yuan Bei had once said that there were 3 sacred trees in the Buddhist monasteries: the carefree tree, Bodhi tree, and Sahara tree. None of the 3 sacred trees were in Tianhuang mainland. According to the ancient records of the Buddhist monasteries, they should be in paradise. Now that he thought about it, paradise in the Buddhist monasteries might be a name for the upper world. In the ancient era, a carefree flower landed on Tianhuang mainland and was obtained by the founder master of Fahua Monastery. It was revered as an utmost treasure of the Buddhist monasteries and was passed down to this day. Eventually, it landed in his body and became a part of him. As the name suggested, the carefree wood was a section of the carefree tree. The carefree flower was merely a flower on the carefree tree and already possessed many mysterious powers. What was the concept of a huge section of carefree wood? Even conjoint body mighty figures would be tempted by such a huge section of carefree wood. Elder Huixing continued. For some reason, news of the appearance of this huge section of carefree wood in Southern Dual sect spread and caused a calamity to befall the sect. Why? Did some sect or faction or peerless expert snatch the carefree wood away? Su Zimo asked with narrowed eyes. No. Elder Huixing shook his head. The one who attacked was not a faction of the cultivation world, but one of the primordial 9 races, the Bloodvine race. Su Zimo's eyes shone with a murderous intent. Elder Huixing said, the true form of the Bloodvine race is the primordial Bloodvine. Although they're bloodthirsty, they're still plants. To them, the carefree wood is an absolute tonic and has a fatal attraction. Not long after the news spread, the Bloodvine army killed their way to Southern Dual sect. Su Zimo said indifferently, if I'm not wrong, Depamkara Temple should not have helped, right? Elder Huixing chuckled bitterly. How can they help? The Bloodvine race came with a menacing aura, and even Depamkara Temple alone can't defend against them. Humph! Su Zimo sneered. Unable to defend against them? That was just an excuse. It was nothing more than the fact that Depamkara Temple was unwilling to get involved, because it had nothing to do with them. However, as one of the 6 Buddhist monasteries and a super sect of the cultivation world, Depamkara Temple's attitude was chilling. Su Zimo asked again, what happened after that? What has Mingzhen got to do with this matter? When they heard that, the monks of Depamkara Temple looked ashamed. A moment later, Elder Huixing said, we didn't intend to step in. However, Mingzhen insisted on heading to Southern Dual sect. He said that even if we don't fight the Bloodvine race head-on, we have to think of a way to save some people. Most of the cultivators of Southern Dual sect are innocent. Buddha is merciful and saves all living beings. We can't sit idly by. When he heard that, Su Zimo was silent. Ba. The monks lowered their heads in shame and chanted Buddhist proclamations. Chapter 1421. Su Zimo was not surprised that Depamkara Monastery would make such a choice. Actually, be it the sects, factions, or cultivators themselves, they could only protect themselves if they wanted to survive in the cruel cultivation world. Although the immortal sects were righteous sects that took on the responsibility of slaying demons and fiends, they might not attack if any great demons or fiends appeared. On the contrary, it was not uncommon for immortals and fiends to join forces for certain benefits. It was the same for the Buddhist monasteries. The Buddha was benevolent and merciful, delivering all living beings. However, how many Buddhists could truly be benevolent and pity all living beings? Depamkara Monastery aside, didn't the other super sects of the South region choose to stay out of this as well? Su Zimo was not surprised that Mingzhen could make such a decision. That was because he had lived with Mingzhen at the bottom of the Dragon Burial Valley for 20 years and knew the latter too well. Mingzhen had a pure heart and was devoted to Buddhism. Even in this treacherous environment, it did not change in the slightest. Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva had once made a vow to save all living beings to attain Bodhi. He swore that he would not become a Buddha until hell was empty. It was precisely because Mingzhen inherited that vow that he was able to obtain the recognition and inheritance of Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva in the Tao inheritance ground. If Southern Dual sect was taken over by the Bloodvine race, How was the danger there any different from hell? Su Zimo looked at Elder Hui Xing, Abbot Hui Shun and the other monks and said slowly, Ming Zhen's cultivation realm is indeed inferior to yours. However, you guys will never be able to compare to his breadth of mind. The monks sighed and lowered their heads without arguing. Su Zimo heaved a long sigh of relief and asked again. And then? Ming Zhen insisted on going, and I could only remind him not to take any risks. If he saw that things weren't going well, he had to leave as soon as possible. However, Abbot Huishan hesitated for a moment, and his eyes dimmed as he sighed. However, Ming Zhen never came out after entering Southern Dual Sect. Su Zimo's expression turned cold as he questioned loudly. Ming Zhen's titular disciple got into trouble in the South region, and Dapamkara Monastery did nothing? I sigh. Abbot Huishan wanted to say something, but it turned into a long sigh in the end. How? Ming Zhen was the one who refused to listen. A monk at the side muttered softly. What did you say? Su Zimo glared coldly at the man and shouted. The monk was so scared that his heart trembled. He immediately swallowed the words that were about to come out of his mouth, and shut his mouth. He didn't even dare to look at Su Zimo. Elder Hui Xing sighed softly and said, I know that there are some words that Benefactor Araki Takeshi cannot accept, but there is nothing we can do. I heard that the young master of the Bloodvine race led an army to attack Southern Dual Sect this time round, and there are thousands of them. As for the young master of the Bloodvine race, Tung Lingzi, he's the strongest monster incarnate of the Bloodvine race. Although he's only at the conjoint body realm, I'm not his match. Hee. Su Zimo could not help sneering and said, As a super sect, doesn't Dapamkara Temple have a Mahayana ancestor? If a half-martial ancestor couldn't do it, then he would ask the old ancestor to come out. Just now, aren't you going to ask the ancestor to kill me? What? You have the guts to kill me, but you don't have the guts to kill other races? No. Elder Hui Xing shook his head. If we ask the ancestor, we can naturally suppress the Bloodvine race of Southern Dual Sect. However, that will definitely alarm the ancestor of the Bloodvine race. At that time, it will be a disaster for Dapamkara Temple. Then we'll ask the emperor to come out, Su Zimo said in a deep voice. Dapamkara Temple has been around for ages. Don't we have an emperor? Elder Hui Xing was silent for a long time before sending a voice transmission slowly. Benefactor Araki Takeshi, it's extremely difficult to become an emperor. In the history of Dapamkara Temple, there were indeed emperors. However, in this generation, there were no patriarchs conferred the title of emperor. This is a secret of Dapamkara Temple. Benefactor Araki Takeshi, please don't spread it. Su Zimo was silent. The fact that Elder Hui Xing could tell him such a secret showed that he had indeed made such a choice after careful consideration. Elder Hui Xing sent another voice transmission. We're not alone. We bear the fate of the entire Dapamkara Temple on our shoulders. If we save Ming Zhen and provoke the ancestor of the Bloodvine race, or even the emperor of the race, the legacy of Dapamkara Temple will be severed, and will be sinners of Dapamkara Temple. Although Su Zimo did not approve of Dapamkara Temple's choice in his heart, he could not criticize them anymore. Between Ming Zhen and the legacy of the sect, and the thousands of monks of the sect, Dapamkara Temple chose the latter to protect the legacy of the sect, and the monks under them. It was hard to say if that was the right choice. At the very least, Su Zimo did not agree. Today, if they took a step back in front of the foreign race, they would definitely push their luck. Giving in blindly was not a solution. However, if Dapamkara Temple were to join forces with other super sects because of this, they would probably not receive any response. Which sect or faction would provoke the primordial 9 races for no reason, and invite trouble upon themselves? Pondering for a moment, Su Zimo asked again. Since that's the case, why are you guys being so secretive? You just have to make this clear. Even if you guys feel guilty, you don't have to stop me from ascending the mountain or even fight, right? Dapamkara Temple chose to sacrifice Ming Zhen to protect the sect. The monks of Dapamkara Temple naturally felt guilty, and were embarrassed to face Su Zimo. Even so, Dapamkara Temple's reaction was a little too extreme. This? Abbot Huishan hesitated for a moment and said embarrassedly, Patron Araki Takashi, you might not know this, but after the news of you being alive spread, the Protoss, which Heavenly Eye, Golden Crow, Bloodvine and Rakshasa races all issued kill orders for you. Kill order? Suzumo narrowed his eyes. He had vaguely read about this badge in some ancient books. In the primordial era, the kill order was the most threatening death badge of the primordial 9 races. Once the kill order was issued, the primordial races would spare no effort to kill the other party. Anyone who received this badge was equivalent to a dead man. In the ancient era, only the emperors of the human race received the kill order of the primordial races. Of course, some emperors were indeed killed by the primordial races. For existences like the eternal human emperor, even the kill order of the primordial races could not do anything to him. Ever since the ancient war, the kill order of the primordial races had not appeared. No one would have thought that the badge would descend in this life. Furthermore, the primordial 6 races had all issued kill orders. The order states that anyone who dares to take in Araki Takashi will definitely be massacred by the primordial races. Abbot Huishin said, Patron Araki Takashi, please forgive me. I'm afraid there's no sect or faction in Tianhuang mainland that would dare to have anything to do with you, let alone Dapamkara Temple. Suzumo understood. If Dapamkara Temple did not stop him from ascending the mountain, countless experts of the primordial races would descend upon Dapamkara Temple once news of this spread. However, if Dapamkara Temple fought with Suzumo, it would naturally not attract the hostility of the primordial races. Therefore, once Suzumo forced his way up the mountain, Dapamkara Temple would attack no matter what to escape from the killing intent of the primordial races. Chapter 1422. The primordial 6 races sure think highly of me. Suzumo laughed without any fear in his eyes. Patron Araki Takashi, I'll say one more thing. You must not underestimate your opponent. The moment the kill order is issued, they will not rest until you're dead. Elder Huixing said earnestly, the various races will send their top experts to look for you, and their combat strength is definitely not something the primordial races of Heaven and Earth Valley can compare to. If the experts of the primordial races cannot succeed, they will send even stronger people until you're killed. Even if it's Misty Peak, 100 Refinement Sect will definitely not be able to defend against it, let alone you. In the ancient era, there were even many emperors of the human race who could not withstand the kill order and died in the hands of the primordial races. I got it. Thank you for your reminder, fellow Taoist. Suzumo nodded and turned to leave. Now that he had asked about Ming Zhen, there was no need for him to be entangled with the monks of Dapamkara Temple. Furthermore, now that he had been ordered to be killed by the primordial 6 races, Dapamkara Temple would definitely avoid him. Why should he stay here and annoy them? When they saw Suzumo leave, the monks of Dapamkara Temple heaved a sigh of relief. Only Elder Huixing frowned slightly with a worried expression. He could not help but ask, Patron Araki Takashi, where are you going? Southern Dual Sect. Suzumo replied indifferently. Ah! All the monks were shocked and cried out in alarm. Araki Takashi was truly audacious. Instead of hiding after being ordered to be killed by the primordial races, he was going to deliver himself to them? Elder Huixing hesitated for a moment before persuading. Patron Araki Takashi, forgive me for being direct. Right now, the Bloodvine race has occupied a radius of 50 kilometers around 6-Star Mountain of Southern Dual Sect. There are probably more than 10,000 people of the Bloodvine race on 6-Star Mountain, with the young master of the Bloodvine race, Tunglingzi, holding down the fort personally. Even the super sects and factions will find it difficult to fight against them, let alone you. What Elder Huixing said was indeed the truth. Given the current strength of the Bloodvine race in Southern Dual Sect, unless the patriarch of the human race appeared, or the super sects of the southern region joined forces, Suzumo was truly weak alone. That's right. Ming Zhen is already dead. Patron Desolate Marshal, there's no hurry to take revenge. Abbot Huishin persuaded as well. How do you know that Ming Zhen is dead? Suzumo stopped in his tracks and asked instead. It has already been 10 years. Ming Zhen must have died long ago after falling into the hands of the Bloodvine race. How can he still be alive? Abbot Huishin laughed bitterly. Ming Zhen is my friend, as well as my senior brother. Since he's in the Southern Duel sect, I want to see him dead or alive." Su Zimo's face was filled with killing intent as he said murderously, "If Ming's true body dies, the Bloodvine race of Southern Duel sect will have to accompany him in death." With that, Su Zimo left Dipankara Temple without looking back. Patron Araki Takashi, Elder Hui Xing looked at Su Zimo's back view and reminded him once more, "There's a high chance that there's a half-martial ancestor of the Bloodvine race on 6-Star Mountain. You have to be careful." Su Zimo's movement technique was extremely fast, and he disappeared from the sights of the monks in the blink of an eye. "Elder, what's the point of reminding him of that?" a conjoint body monk said. "Araki Takashi is obstinate and stubborn. It's difficult to distinguish between good and evil. Since he's bent on sending himself to his death, we've already done our best to explain the pros and cons to him. Why bother persuading him?" "That's right. Even if Elder tries to persuade him, he might not appreciate it," another monk added. Elder Hui Xing frowned and turned around. Looking at the two monks who just now spoke, he said in a deep voice, "Don't forget, he's Araki Takashi, the Araki Takashi who founded the Wu Dao and brought blessings to all living beings. Such merit is enough for his name to be passed down through history and affect all generations. Even the ancient emperors could not compare to him. We're already feeling guilty for not helping him. How can you guys have the cheek to say such things?" After all, Elder Hui Xing was in charge of punishment and had always been strict. Just now, although he was suppressed by Araki Takashi, he still had a terrifying might in Dipankara Temple. The two monks lowered their heads and did not dare to say anything. "The two of you, reflect on your mistakes and copy the Heart Sutra 10,000 times. Elder Hui Xing said in a deep voice. "Not one less." "Yes." The two monks did not dare to argue. They lowered their heads and admitted their mistakes before leaving dejectedly. Sigh. Elder Hui Xing looked in the direction Su Zimo left and sighed softly. "I hope the heavens protect him." After Su Zimo left Dipankara Temple, he took out a map and determined the direction before heading towards Southern Duel Sect. The primordial 6 races had issued the kill order. Actually, the one who was truly in danger was Qinglian's true body. He had 3 true bodies. Right now, his dragon phoenix true body was in the ancestral dragon land. Unless the primordial 6 races joined forces and attacked the Dragon Bone Valley with their armies, the dragon phoenix true body would not be in any danger. As for Wu Dao's true body, it was outside the 3 realms and not in the 5 elements. Not many people knew of its existence. Furthermore, Wu Dao's true body was in seclusion in Pingyang town and cultivating. It was difficult for the primordial 6 races to find him. However, Qinglian's true body was different. If Qinglian's true body were to walk around Tianhuang mainland, she would definitely leave behind all sorts of traces and be exposed easily. At that time, the experts of the primordial races would definitely look for her. It would be fine if they were at the conjoint body realm. However, it would be troublesome if they were half-martial ancestors of the primordial races. Qinglian's true body had just entered the conjoint body realm and could suppress half-martial ancestors of the human race. However, against half-martial ancestors of the primordial races, the outcome was unpredictable. Tung Lingzi of the Bloodvine race was already a little troublesome. If there was truly a half-martial ancestor of the Bloodvine race guarding 6-Star Mountain of Southern Duel Sect, it would indeed be quite dangerous this time round. Of course, no matter what, Su Zimo had to investigate Southern Duel Sect. In Su Zimo's opinion, the reason why the Bloodvine race attacked and destroyed Southern Duel Sect and occupied 6-Star Mountain was not solely because of the appearance of the Carefree Wood. The Carefree Wood might just be an opportunity. In this generation, there were signs that the primordial races were ready to make a move. Back in Myriad Phenomenon City, the appearance of the Rakshasa and Protoss was a start. Later on, there was the calamity of the Witch Gu in the North region, the Battle of Heaven and Earth Valley in the Middle Continent, even the Battle of Penglai Island. At that time, Su Zimo instinctively thought that Penglai Island and the Golden Crow race had joined forces to set a trap to kill him. However, on second thought, there was another possibility. Penglai Island was already under the control of the Golden Crow race. According to Elder Hui Xing, not every super sect had a ruler overseeing it. If there were no emperors, even Mahayana patriarchs would not be able to defend against the primordial races. Think about the outcome of Fahua Monastery and Daming Monastery of the North region 10,000 years ago. Even with a Dharma overlord around at that time, they were still destroyed by an ancestor realm dragon. The difference between them was obvious. If Su Zimo's deduction was right, there was a high chance that the actions of the primordial races would increase in number and scale in the future. The primordial races would definitely not be willing to stay in a corner. When the patriarchs of the primordial races, or even the emperors of the primordial races walked out, the situation of Tianhuang mainland would be completely changed. Chapter 1423. Six-Star Mountain. It was one of the more famous places in the South region that was filled with spirit. The six main peaks were Tianfu Peak, Tianliang Peak, Tianji Peak, Tiantong Peak, Tianxiang Peak and Seven Kills Peak. The six main peaks corresponded to the six stars of the Southern Dipper and resonated with heaven and earth with rich spirit qi. Many years ago, the ancestral master of Southern Dipper sect traveled here and discovered this blessed grotto heaven. Since then, he established a sect here, and the sect expanded rapidly with many famous cultivators. But now, the region of Six-Star Mountain was blood-red and filled with vines with human faces. They were dense and sinister. It was a hellish scene. The blood-colored vines had spread rapidly for the past 10 years and had already occupied the region within 100 kilometers of Six-Star Mountain. Apart from the blood-colored vines, there were no other living beings within the radius of 100 kilometers. The vegetation was withered. The barren land was filled with withered bones. One of the primordial 9 races, the Blood Vine race. Among the primordial 9 races, this was the only race that was able to become a primordial race with the origin of plants. That was because the Blood Vine race was the most domineering among the plants. As long as a single blood vine grew in an area, the nutrients of the other plants would be sucked dry until they withered. Furthermore, the blood vine race was extremely savage and bloodthirsty. If any living being stepped into the territory of the blood vine race, their flesh would be devoured, and only their bones would be spat out. Even in the primordial era, the habitat of the other primordial races did not allow a single blood vine race to appear. Seven Kills Peak. In a palace that was covered in blood vines, a young man in a crimson-red robe sat on a high seat. He held a blood-red gourd in his left hand, and below him was a throne that was piled up from piles of bones. A large circle of human skulls surrounded the throne, and were stained with blood. This person was the young master of the Bloodvine race, Tung Lingzi. At that moment, more than 10 horrified cultivators floated in front of Tung Lingzi. All of them were pale and trembled in fear. Although the cultivators were dirty, one could vaguely tell from their robes that they were cultivators of Southern Dipper sect. Fufufu. Tung Lingzi looked at the dozen or so cultivators in front of him and smiled evilly. He said softly, "Don't be afraid, don't be afraid. Be good." As he spoke, more than 10 blood-colored vines that were as thick as an arm extended from Tung Lingzi's wide blood-red robe and coiled towards the cultivators. Woo-woo! These self-cultivators' eyes were filled with fear. They struggled with all their might, but they couldn't move or even speak. They could only let out a series of whimpering sounds. The 10 or so cultivators could only watch the thick, crimson blood vines approach them, unable to resist at all. This process was simply an enormous torture for the dozen or so cultivators. A female cultivator couldn't take it anymore. Her mind collapsed and she fainted on the spot. The rest of the cultivators were also trembling as they looked at Tung Lingzi pleadingly. Tung Lingzi had a complacent expression on his face. He enjoyed the fear these blood food had for him. In his eyes, these cultivators were food. It was his food. In the primordial era, the human race was the most inferior and weak race. They could only be enslaved and reduced to food. The more fearful the blood food was, the more excited the blood-robed young man was. As one of the primordial 9 races, the Bloodvine race had a strong bloodline. However, they could only stay in a corner for the past few years. Tung Lingzi had had enough. Thankfully, The fortune of the human race had come to an end, and the era of the primordial races had arrived. Are you afraid? Are you afraid? Tung Lingzi smiled gently. But I've still got to eat you guys. As he spoke, the disc-shaped human faces at the top of the blood-colored vines suddenly split open, revealing crisscrossing sharp fangs within with a torrential stench. Poof! Suddenly, a blood vine popped out and opened its mouth, biting the head of a cultivator. The vines wriggled and swallowed him bit by bit. The rest of the cultivators were already scared out of their wits after witnessing the scene. Some of the cultivators' life force was draining rapidly, and their eyes dimmed. That person was scared to death. Sigh. Tung Lingzi sighed. I've got to eat you as soon as possible. Your flesh won't be fresh once you're dead. Poof. A blood vine opened its mouth and swallowed the cultivator. A moment later, the blood vine that swallowed the cultivator at the beginning opened its mouth once more and spat out a pile of bones stained with warm blood. The remaining cultivators were in despair. They knew that they could not escape their fate of being devoured. Before long, more than 10 cultivators were devoured by the blood-robed young man. Tung Lingzi let out a long breath of air and licked his scarlet tongue in enjoyment. The blood-colored calabash in his left palm turned even brighter and more sinister. Young master. Right then, a Bloodvine clansman at the bottom of the palace said in a deep voice, "There's not much blood food left on 6-Star Mountain. It's probably only enough for you to eat for a year. Seems like I've got to go out and catch some blood food." Tung Lingzi twisted his neck. The blood food of Southern Dual Sect is really nothing. It's only been 10 years and it's gone. As he said that, Tung Lingzi smacked his lips, as though he was reminiscing about the aftertaste. Actually, there's a temple in the southern region with plenty of blood food. Furthermore, they're all of superior quality. Tung Lingzi narrowed his eyes and said faintly, "Young master, are you referring to Dapamkara Temple?" The Bloodvine clansman below asked. Yes, Tung Lingzi nodded. Dapamkara Temple is one of the 6 major Buddhist monasteries of the human cultivation world. Given our strength, we might not be able to take it down. The Bloodvine clansman analyzed. Tung Lingzi chuckled. If we want to take down Dapamkara Temple, we'll naturally have to invite my father. That's right. If the clan leader takes action, there won't be any suspense. The Bloodvine clansman nodded. Tung Lingzi smiled. Actually, Dapamkara Temple is strong on the outside but weak on the inside. Their titular disciple has been in my hands for 10 years, and no one has dared to come to Dapamkara Temple. I'm guessing that no one from Dapamkara Temple will be conferred the title of emperor in this generation. Young master is wise, the Bloodvine clansman hurriedly flattered before asking. Young master and clan leader, when are you going to take down Dapamkara Temple? There's no hurry, Tung Lingzi replied indifferently. Once I absorb all the power of the carefree wood, I might be able to become a half-martial ancestor, or even step into the ancestor realm. At that time, I'll be able to flatten Dapamkara Temple without my father's help. After flattening Dapamkara Temple, it'll be the 3 aristocratic families. At that time, the southern region will be under the control of our Bloodvine race. The Bloodvine clansman was rather excited as well as he continued. Yes, Tung Lingzi nodded. That's all for the future. Let's put it aside for now. Right, is there any news of Araki Takashi? I heard that Araki Takashi is the body of the creation Qinglian. If we capture him, he'll be the best food and a great tonic. Not at the moment, the Bloodvine clansman replied. If there's any news, I'll definitely report it immediately. Yes, Tung Lingzi instructed. The other primordial races have also issued kill orders. Keep a close eye on them. If Araki Takashi appears, we can't let the Protoss and Heavenly Eye race beat us to it. I'll definitely be the first to eat Araki Takashi's flesh. Chapter 1424. In less than 10 days after leaving Dapamkara Temple, Su Zimo arrived in the vicinity of 6-Star Mountain. From afar, 6-Star Mountain was dyed in blood. Menacing vines crawled all over the mountains and rivers in a dense manner. Blood-colored gourds grew on the vines and swayed with the wind, shimmering with a sinister sanguine light. Su Zimo's expression was cold. He did not hide his tracks and flew through the air, speeding towards 6-Star Mountain. Now that he was at the conjoint body realm, and Qinglian's true body had been reborn, there were not many people in Tianhuang mainland who could suppress him without the patriarch. There was no need for him to change his appearance and hide his identity. He was Araki Takeshi. The reason why he charged into 6-Star Mountain today was to cause trouble for the Bloodvine race. The moment Su Zimo arrived at the periphery of 6-Star Mountain, the Bloodvines sensed the blood chi in his body and crawled over. To think that there would be a cultivator who doesn't know what's good for him to come here. Gaga gaga, what a strong bloodline. I'll be able to take human form after devouring him. Some of the Bloodvine race members were excited. The Bloodvines outside 6-Star Mountain did not have high cultivation realms and could not even take human form. Naturally, they could not tell Su Zimo's true state. In the blink of an eye, at least hundreds of blood-colored vines coiled towards Su Zimo in a frenzy, wanting to drink his blood and eat his flesh. Without even looking at the blood vines, Su Zimo conjured hand seals with both hands and channeled his essence spirit. Swoosh! Suddenly, 3 balls of flames of different colors rose beside Su Zimo. Scarlet Immortal Dao Fire, Gold Buddhist Dao Fire, Black Fiend Dao Fire. That was a dermic art from the Scarlet Flame Heart Sutra, Scarlet Flame Revolving Lantern. The 3 Dao fires revolved around Su Zimo and spun slowly, forming a flame barrier. As soon as the blood vines rushed up and revealed their bloody mouths, they crashed into the Scarlet Flame Revolving Lantern. Now that Su Zimo was at the conjoint body realm, even some conjoint body realm bloodvines would not dare to take the power of the Scarlet Flame Revolving Lamp head-on, let alone the low-level bloodvine race. After all, the bloodvine race was a type of plant. Although they were the overlords of plants and trees, they were not without weaknesses. Plants and trees were most afraid of fire. As for the Scarlet Flame Heart Sutra that Su Zimo cultivated, his attainments in flames were extremely strong. The 3 Dao flames that he condensed were even more terrifying. When these blood-red vines collided with him, they instantly turned into ashes. Creak, creak, creak. When the vines were reduced to ashes, the main bodies of the bloodvine race actually let out a sharp cry. The other vines on their bodies wanted to shrink back to avoid the 3 flames. However, how ferocious were the 3 Dao fires? How could these low-level blood vines resist them? Any spark that landed on their bodies would ignite. The flames spread along the vines and spread to the entire body of the blood-red vine. In the blink of an eye, a complete blood-red vine could be burned to ashes. Su Zimo's expression was cold. Along the way from outside 6-Star Mountain, he did not stop at all and charged in with the 3 Dao fires surrounding him. Everywhere he passed, flames surged and countless Bloodvine race members were buried in the sea of flames. Of course, those Bloodvine race members did not have high cultivation realms and could not take human form. They could only watch helplessly as the flames descended and burned them to ashes. Who is it? How dare you trespass into the territory of my Bloodvine race? An expert of the Bloodvine race who had taken human form appeared and stood in midair. He looked at the flames not far away and questioned loudly with a furious expression. Although this Bloodvine race member could take human form, his cultivation realm was only at the Dharma characteristic realm. Bloodvine race's territory? Su Zimo scoffed coldly and did not even look at him, merely flicking his fingers casually. Chi! A sword chi burst forth. A white streak tore through the void and entered the glabella of the Bloodvine Dao Lord instantly. That person's eyes widened in disbelief. The sword chi was way too fast, and he did not even have time to dodge. A single slash. It pierced through his sea of consciousness and shattered his primordial spirit. The corpse of the Dao Lord of the Bloodvine race fell from midair. Swash! 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 Seeing this scene, the Bloodvine race that originally wanted to go forward were all shocked. They all moved and fled towards the 6 main peaks. Not good, there's an invasion. Many Bloodvine race members shouted as they fled. Su Zimo advanced at an extremely fast speed and approached the 6 main peaks before long. All of a sudden, Su Zimo's expression changed as he sensed something and looked over. Not far away at the foot of the mountain, there was a large empty space surrounded by blood vines that formed a fence. There were many cultivators gathered inside. There were more than 10,000 of them. Or rather, Those cultivators could no longer be considered as humans. He did not know what those cultivators had experienced to be tortured to the point that they were neither human nor ghost. Every single cultivator was dressed in tattered clothes, and could vaguely make out that they were the dermic robes of Southern Dual Sect. Those cultivators had withered, yellow faces and dispirited expressions. Every single one of them had an iron hoop around their necks with a gigantic chain that was chained to the bloodvine fence. Those people had empty gazes and numb expressions. Even when they caught sight of Su Zimo in midair through the gaps in the fence, their expressions did not change, and their eyes were dead. Su Zimo's eyes widened in disbelief as he thought of a possibility and his body trembled slightly. Is the Bloodvine clan raising the cultivators of the human race as livestock? Su Zimo was enraged and his face was filled with killing intent, as two flames seemed to burn in his eyes. He had heard about the tragic fate of the human race in the primordial era, in some ancient books, or from the mouths of others. Humans were lowly and weak. They were enslaved by the 10,000 races, and were even treated as food and offerings by other races. When he heard that, Su Zimo felt emotional as well. But now that he witnessed it personally, he truly felt the despair that the humans of the primordial era endured. It was the sorrow of being unable to see the light of day, and being unable to fight back. Taking a deep breath of air, Su Zimo's figure flashed, and he arrived outside the fence in the blink of an eye. A spark flickered from his fingertip, and burned the fence to ashes before long. When the Southern Dual Sect cultivators saw Su Zimo, all of them had fearful expressions, and huddled into a ball like frightened birds. A heaven-slaying sword chi shot out from Su Zimo's fingertip, and shuttled through the crowd with an endless sharpness. Clang, clang, clang. The sound of metal clashing filled the air as sparks flew. In just more than 10 breaths, the chains on the cultivators were severed by the heaven-slaying sword chi. However, even though the surrounding fences were gone, and the chains on their bodies were severed, those cultivators did not know how to escape. It was as though they were already numb. Su Zimo surveyed the crowd, and searched twice carefully with a disappointed expression. Initially, he was hoping that Ming Zhen would be in the crowd. Unfortunately, he found nothing after searching. Fellow Taoist Su? Right then, a weak and timid voice sounded from the crowd. Chapter 1425. Su Zimo looked in the direction of the voice. The voice was way too soft as a mosquito. If not for his strong hearing, he might not have noticed it. Su Zimo's gaze landed on a female cultivator in the crowd. The female cultivator had disheveled hair, and was curled into a ball. Hiding in the crowd, her eyes were livelier than others. You are. Su Zimo's gaze narrowed as though he recalled something. He probed, Tang Shiyin. The female cultivator nodded repeatedly when she heard that name. The female cultivator wiped away the dirt on her face haphazardly, revealing her facial features. Although they were still dirty, they were recognizable. It's really you. Su Zimo was surprised. To think that he would be able to meet an old friend in Southern Dual Sect. Tang Shiyin stood up, as though she wanted to walk towards Su Zimo. However, she hesitated for a moment in fear. Come over, I won't hurt you. Su Zimo nodded. Upon hearing that, Tang Shiyin mustered her courage and walked out of the crowd. The #1 beauty of Southern Dual Sect back then was no longer elegant. Back when the two of them first met in the ancient battlefield, they were both at the Jin Dan realm. But now, Su Zimo had already entered the conjoint body realm, and was an omnipotent mighty figure. However, Tang Shiyin's cultivation was only at the nascent soul realm. The gap between the two of them was getting wider. In the ancient battlefield back then, how many of the hundreds of thousands of paragons could truly catch up to Su Zimo? 10 years ago, did you see a monk from Dapamkara Monastery? Su Zimo looked at Tang Shiyin, and asked in a deep voice. Tang Shiyin recalled for a moment and asked, did the monk look young and hold a green lamp in his hands? That's right. Su Zimo's eyes lit up as he asked, where is he? Is he still alive? Back in the Dao inheritance ground, Ming Zhen appeared and fought alongside him. His destiny dermic weapon was a green lamp. 10 years ago, it was all thanks to this monk that some cultivators from my Southern Dual Sect managed to escape. Tang Shiyin sighed softly. However, this monk's cultivation was insufficient, and could not defeat the young master of the bloodvine race, and was suppressed by him. So many years have passed, I'm sure he's long dead. Su Zimo slightly clenched his fist, his expression cold. Su Dao. Senior Su, are you here to save us? Tang Shiyun realized that the difference between the two of them was too great. It was inappropriate for her to continue addressing him as fellow cultivator. Thus, she quickly corrected herself and asked anxiously. Yes. Su Zimo nodded and took out some elixirs. He placed them in a storage bag and handed them to Tang Shiyun. Distribute these elixirs and leave this place as soon as possible. Tang Shiyun's hands trembled as she took the bag of holding. Tears began to flow out of her eyes. However, the other cultivators were still expressionless as they stared at this scene. They didn't feel the slightest bit of joy from seeing the light of day again. These people. Su Zimo looked at the expressions of the cultivators and felt a sense of sorrow. Tang Shiyun smiled bitterly. 10 years ago, the bloodvine race killed their way here. Our southern dual-sex patriarch died in battle along with 3 mighty figures and a half-martial ancestor. However, we couldn't defend against the invasion of the bloodvine race army. In less than a day, the entire southern dual sect fell into the control of the bloodvine race. Apart from the few hundred people that the monk helped to escape, the other hundreds of thousands of sect disciples were reared as livestock by the bloodvine race, just so that they could eat fresh meat. All these years, the bloodvine race has locked us up here and sealed our dermic powers. We can't even commit suicide. When he heard that, the killing intent in Su Zimo's eyes was on the verge of bursting out. Tang Shiyun said sorrowfully, for the past 10 years, the bloodvine race would eat up to 100 southern dual-sect cultivators every day. No matter how we begged and struggled, it was to no avail. We could only watch as our fellow sect members around us decreased bit by bit. That's hundreds of thousands of fellow sect members. Right now, there's only slightly more than 10,000 of us left. Tang Shiyun could not hold on any longer and broke down mentally, crying out loud. Every day, these cultivators opened their eyes and did not know if they could survive the day, or if they would be eaten as food. Initially, we still had a glimmer of hope. Tang Shiyun's face was filled with tears as she smiled bitterly. After all, hundreds of our fellow sect members escaped. They would seek help from other upper sects and super sections. Perhaps, there might be experts of the human race who would come and save us from our misery. However, we waited and waited. 1 year, 2 years, 5 years, no one came. Finally, we gave up. Su Zimo was silent. He clenched his fists tightly, and his knuckles were incomparably pale, because he used too much strength. Even if the cultivators of southern dual sects sought help, no sect or faction would rush over to save them from their misery. Who would offend a huge enemy like the bloodvine race for some random cultivators? The human race had led a peaceful life for too long. They no longer had the sharpness of the ancient era, the courage to fight against the primordial races, and the unyielding tenacity of steel. The ancient sages of the human race, be it low-level cultivators or mighty figure patriarchs, were all righteous and took care of one another with utmost sincerity. If they were to witness this scene today, they would probably shed tears of sorrow and regret. Most of the current cultivators had even forgotten about the hardships that the human race experienced in the primordial era. They had forgotten that in the ancient war, the deaths of patriarchs, emperors and countless experts of the human race fought with all their might in exchange for the eternal peace of the human race. Even a super sect like Dipankara Monastery, one of the 6 major Buddhist monasteries, was taking care of itself. Who would stand out to save everyone from Southern Dual Sect? I'm a little late. Su Zimo looked at everyone from Southern Dual Sect and said slowly. However, everyone, don't worry. With me, Araki Takashi, guarding this place today, no one will be able to hurt you guys. Apart from a few people who had a glimmer of hope in their eyes, the rest were still lifeless with numb expressions. Fellow Taoists, he is Araki Takashi, the famous Tao Lord Araki Takashi who founded the Wu Dao. Tang Shiyun was trapped here, and her understanding of Su Zimo was still based on the rumors she had heard previously. She did not know that Su Zimo was already a conjoint body mighty figure. He was the one who suppressed the Rakshasa and Protoss in Myriad Phenomenon City and saved the paragons of the human race. Now that Tao Lord Araki Takashi is here, we have a chance of escaping alive. Tang Shuryan looked at everyone from Southern Dual Sect and took out elixirs from her storage bag, passing them to the cultivators as she said. Most people were indifferent to it. What's the use of Dharma Daojun? Even half-martial ancestors are dead. They're all dead. Ha 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 ha. A cultivator laughed maniacally. Su Zimo had a sorrowful expression. Although these people were still alive, they were no different from dead people. Tao Lord Araki Takashi, please kill me and give me a quick death. For me, that's the greatest relief. A cultivator kowtowed to Su Zimo and begged softly. Tao Lord Araki Takashi, please grant us death. A large group of cultivators knelt down. When he saw that, Su Zimo's eyes turned red, and he had nowhere to vent his anger and sorrow. Eventually, he reared his head and roared into the skies. Bloodvine race, I want you guys to pay with your blood. Chapter 1426. Pure persuasion and comfort could no longer rid the cultivators of Southern Dual Sect of their fear. That fear had been ingrained in them for the past 10 years. Only a true massacre, and the fresh blood of the Bloodvine race, could stimulate these Southern Dual Sect cultivators. It made them realize that although the Bloodvine race was a primordial race, they were not invincible. Su Zimo's gaze intensified as dermic powers surged, and he conjured hand seals with both hands. The 3 Tao fires that were initially revolving around him gathered rapidly, forming a tricolored flame that emanated a shuddering aura. Samadhi Tao fire. Everyone from Southern Dual Sect looked at the dancing flame with fearful expressions and did not dare to make a sound. Go! Su Zimo rose into the air slowly and threw the tricolored flame in his hands in the direction of 6-Star Mountain. At the same time, an essence spirit fire burst forth from his glabella and entered the tricolored flame. The flame shone brightly. Kacharati Tao fire. Now that Su Zimo had cultivated to the conjoint body realm, even half-martial ancestors could not withstand the might of the Kacharati Tao fire. However, at that moment, he was already filled with killing intent and wanted to kill all the Bloodvine race on 6-Star Mountain. He had no intention of holding back and was going all out. Swoosh! Raging flames surged. Su Zimo channeled his essence spirit, and dermic power surged as the Kacharati Tao fire spread and burned in all directions. Some of the Bloodvine race that could not take human form could only watch helplessly as the Kacharati Tao fire burned over and turned into ashes in their struggles and screams. Some of the Bloodvine race transformed into human form and wanted to escape. However, the Kacharati Tao fire was extremely powerful, and they could not defend against a single spark that landed on their bodies. Su Zimo pushed his essence spirit to its limits. The Kacharati Tao fire spread at an extremely fast speed as well. Some of the Bloodvine race that were slower to react were caught up by the Kacharati Tao fire and burned into ashes. In the blink of an eye, 6-Star Mountain was engulfed in a sea of flames. Everyone from Southern Dual Sect widened their eyes and mouths, speechless. This scene had a huge impact on them. Originally, in their impression, more than half of the Bloodvine race that was ferocious, tyrannical, bloodthirsty, and invincible had actually been burned to death by this fire. Although most of those who were burned to death by the Kacharati Tao fire were low-level Bloodvine tribe members, the Kacharati Tao fire was a rare sight to behold. Even so, a glimmer of hope appeared in the eyes of the Southern Dual Sect. The Kacharati Tao fire spread continuously and enveloped the entire 6-Star Mountain. However, when the fire reached the foot of the 6 main peaks, it seemed to be obstructed by some powerful force and was unable to envelop the 6 main peaks. There were still thousands of Bloodvine clansmen who fled to the 6 main peaks to hide. Su Zimo's expression was grave. He clearly understood that the true battle had only just begun. The top experts of the primordial races must be guarding the 6 main peaks. Boom! 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 One after another, powerful figures soared into the sky, their auras unbridled. The conjoint body mighty figure of the Bloodvine race had appeared. Su Zimo swept his gaze, and in the blink of an eye, more than 20 conjoint body mighty figures appeared in midair. Their blood chi surged, and a massive pressure descended. Under the suppression of the spirit consciousnesses of more than 20 conjoint body mighty figures, the Kacharati Dao fire was greatly suppressed and the flames flickered, as though they could be extinguished at any moment. When dharmic arts were condensed, their might would naturally be released to their limits. Su Zimo had spread the Kacharati Dao fire to such a large area, and its might was already greatly reduced. Even a conjoint body mighty figure of the blood vine race could suppress it. In midair, the number of conjoint body mighty figures of the blood vine race was still increasing. Before long, there were already 50 of them. There were already 50 conjoint body mighty figures gathered on 6-Star Mountain. One could imagine how terrifying the foundation of the blood vine race, one of the primordial 9 races, was. If it was just these mighty figures of the blood vine race, they were nothing in Su Zimo's eyes. However, he could vaguely sense that there were even stronger existences hidden in 6-Star Mountain that were watching him from a certain corner. Bloodvine half-martial ancestor. Furthermore, there was a high chance that there was more than one of them. If a huge battle breaks out later, leave this place with your fellow sect members as soon as possible. Su Zimo sent a voice transmission to Tang Shuryan secretly. There were more experts of the Bloodvine race on 6-Star Mountain than he had imagined. If a huge battle broke out, he would not be able to fend for himself, and would not be able to protect Tang Shuryan and the others. Who are you? How dare you barge into the territory of our Bloodvine race and kill us? A mighty figure of the Bloodvine race hollered. Su Zimo sneered. Didn't your Bloodvine race issue an order to kill me? You don't even recognize me? The expressions of the Bloodvine race in midair changed. You're Araki Takeshi. Some of the Bloodvine race members hollered softly. Fufufu. Right then, a laughter sounded from 7 Kills Peak. A figure in blood-colored robes rose slowly and stuck out his scarlet tongue to lick his lips, saying leisurely, Truly, I've searched high and low only to find it by sheer luck. Araki Takeshi, you've saved me some effort by coming knocking on my door. Young master, when the conjoint body mighty figures of the Bloodvine race saw this person, they bowed one after another. You must be Tung Lingzi. Su Zimo's expression was cold as he looked at the blood-robed youth, without concealing the killing intent in his eyes. That's me, Tung Lingzi smiled sinisterly. Why, mighty figure Araki Takeshi, the strongest monster incarnate in history, has heard of my name as well? You were the one who killed Mingjin? Su Zimo asked coldly. Who's Mingjin? Tung Lingzi shook his head. I've never bothered to remember the names of ants of the human race. What a waste of energy. Who would remember the name of the food they ate? Tung Lingzi smiled gently at Su Zimo. There were still streaks of blood between the gaps of his teeth, resembling a malevolent ghost from hell. Mingjin? As though he thought of something, Tung Lingzi raised his brow and asked, Are you talking about a young monk? Su Zimo narrowed his eyes. When Tung Lingzi saw the change in Su Zimo's expression, he nodded. Seems like it's him. The young monk's blood chi is strong and incomparably pure. I'll keep him in my blood calabash and refine him. As Tung Lingzi said that, he took out a blood-colored calabash and held it in his palm. This blood calabash is my destiny dharmic weapon. Even half-martial ancestors of the human race won't be able to live for more than a year after being kept in. However, this young monk is truly impressive. TSK. He's merely at the Dharma characteristic realm, but he managed to survive in my blood calabash until now. Su Zimo's eyes lit up in delight. Mingjin isn't dead? You don't have to be happy, Tung Lingzi smiled. This young monk can't hold on much longer. I reckon that he'll turn into blood completely in a year or so, and become the essence energy of my blood calabash. There's no need for a year or so. Su Zimo's gaze was sharp and murderous as he said slowly. Today I'll send you to meet Hades. Ha 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 ha. As though he had heard something extremely amusing, Tung Lingzi said sinisterly. Araki Takeshi, don't worry. I'll keep you in my blood calabash as well, and let you accompany him. You'll turn into blood and meet Acheron together. It was the Mid-Autumn Festival again. Ever since he became an immortal, he had been writing and accompanying everyone for the Mid-Autumn Festival. It had been 5 years now. He did not know how many book friends who were celebrating alone in foreign lands would send their blessings to him during this festival as well. No matter what, there's still me and an eternity to accompany you for the Mid-Autumn Festival. There's a song that states that companionship is the longest confession of love. I hope that I can continue writing, so that I can accompany everyone every Mid-Autumn Festival. I also hope that I'll have everyone's company in the future. Happy Mid-Autumn Festival? End of chapter. Chapter 1427. Young Master, there's no need for you to do it personally. I'll help Young Master capture Araki Takeshi. A conjoint body mighty figure of the Blood Vine race stood out. Tung Lingzi waved it off and smiled. No, I'm going to capture this person personally and keep him in my blood calabash. Araki Takeshi, there aren't many people of the same cultivation realm in this world who are worthy of me taking action. Tung Lingzi walked towards Su Zimo with his blood calabash in hand and smiled sinisterly. It's a worthy death for you to die in my hands. Cut the crap. Hand over your life. Su Zimo laughed coldly and charged towards Tung Lingzi in huge strides. Why? You want to fight me in melee combat? Tung Lingzi smiled gently. As the young master of the Blood Vine race, and a monster incarnate of this generation, he saw through Su Zimo's plans instantly. Among the primordial 9 races, although the Blood Vine race was bloodthirsty, their blood chi and physique were not strong, and were far inferior to the Protoss, dragons and other primordial races. They were only stronger than the Witch race. If he could force the Blood Vine race into melee combat, Su Zimo was extremely confident that he could suppress Tung Lingzi with ease given Qinglian's true body. Phew, how can it be that easy? Tung Lingzi chuckled and stomped his feet gently into the void. Swoosh, swoosh. Suddenly blood-colored vines that were as thick as arms grew from the void and coiled towards Su Zimo. Before the blood vines arrived, the circular human faces at the top opened their mouths and revealed sharp fangs that shone with a cold glint. With that, at least a few hundred blood vines coiled over with a stench, almost engulfing Su Zimo. Humph! Su Zimo's expression was unchanged, and he did not stop in his tracks as he flicked his fingertips gently. Chi! 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 Instantly, more than 10 heaven-slaying sword chi burst forth. They were extremely sharp and coiled around Su Zimo, crisscrossing in a white blur. Poof! Poof! Puff! The moment the blood vines approached, they were severed by the heaven-slaying sword chi and blood gushed out, dyeing half the sky red. More than 10 heaven-slaying sword chi spiraled and blocked the hundreds of blood vines outside. Heaven-slaying sword art? Tung Lingzi frowned as a trace of fear flashed through the depths of his eyes. In the records of the Bloodvine clan, the 3 major sword techniques were extremely famous even in the upper realm. If the 3 sword arts were combined, the power would be unimaginable. Even the true immortals of the upper realm would have to avoid him. A storm of blood. Tung Lingzi activated his origin spirit, formed a seal, and pointed at Su Zimo from afar. Woo-woo. Instantly blood-colored figures appeared one after another in midair. Like vengeful ghosts, they surged towards Su Zimo and formed an evil hurricane with a stench. This rain of blood was the inherited secret technique of the Bloodvine race. When this fishy wind blew past, it could even scrape off a cultivator's flesh and blood, leaving nothing behind. In the ancient war, there was once a patriarch of the Bloodvine race who released this secret skill. Wherever the wind passed, only white bones would be left on the ground, in an extremely savage manner. Su Zimo channeled his bloodline with a fearless expression when the wind blew. The creation Qinglian was an utmost treasure of the universe, and was flawless. Right now, Su Zimo was a humanoid creation Qinglian, and was at grade 7. Instantly, the wind was suppressed by Qinglian's bloodline. Countless blood shadows dissipated, and turned into a rain of blood that poured down. The rain of blood was extremely evil, and contained an extremely terrifying corrosive power. However, the Qinglian was untainted by mud, and was the best counter against such filthy and evil things. Su Zimo passed through the rain of blood without being affected, or harmed in the slightest. How dare you use such methods to embarrass yourself? Young master of the Bloodvine race? That's all there is to you. Su Zimo sneered and shouted. I'll show you the dermic arts of the human race. Me. Oem. Su Zimo chanted in Sanskrit. The damning mantra echoed through the world. This time round, he did not release the demon-subduing seal or fiend suppression seal. Instead, he released the two strongest dermic seals of the damning dermic seal. The Great Vajrawheel seal and Great Mount Meru seal. The dermic seals descended. A gigantic Vajrawheel crushed towards Tung Lingzi with a shocking might. Tung Lingzi channeled his bloodline and vanished. A blood vine with 100 vines appeared on the spot, and waved its arms, coiling towards the Vajrawheel in midair. Against the damning dermic seal, Tung Lingzi was forced to reveal his true form. Those thick blood vines were Tung Lingzi's flesh and blood, and were completely different from the dermic art he conjured initially. They were terrifyingly strong. The 100 blood vines moved at the same time, and coiled around the Vajrawheel tightly in the blink of an eye. The Vajrawheel could no longer move. The resplendent Vajrawheel gradually dimmed, and eventually sank deep into the vines. Before long, it was corroded and riddled with holes. Rumble. Bang. Right then, a huge shadow shrouded over. A gigantic divine mountain descended. It was the sacred mountain of the Buddhist monasteries, Mount Meru. The dermic seal formed Mount Meru, and crushed down towards Tung Lingzi with a boundless might. Swoosh. More than 100 vines tore through the air and coiled towards Mount Meru. Poof. 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 However, the moment the vines touched Mount Meru, they were repelled by the sacred power of the sacred mountain, and exploded on the spot. Ah! Tung Lingzi roared. Not only did his injuries fail to push him back, they even made him ferocious. More and more vines rushed towards Mount Meru. The vines that exploded initially splattered on Mount Meru with their pungent blood, causing the brilliance of the sacred mountain to dim gradually, and its power to decrease. The bloodvine race was the most bloodthirsty. Their bloodlines were fused with the bloodlines of countless living beings of different races, and were the most impure and filthiest. Even some dermic weapons would be crippled if they were accidentally tainted by it. For conjoint body mighty figures, the explosion of the vines would regrow instantly. It was nothing much. However, even the great Mount Meru seal could not withstand the filthy and evil blood gushing out. The fact that Tung Lingzi was able to neutralize the two damning dermic seals was proof that he was rather capable. However, Su Zimo had already closed in while Tung Lingzi was entangled with the two damning dermic seals. Melee combat. Su Zimo wanted to maximize his advantage. When they saw that the other mighty figures of the bloodvine race did not attack, and there was no hint of nervousness on their faces. On the contrary, the eyes of the mighty figures of the bloodvine race shone with mockery. On the battlefield, when he saw Su Zimo descend, Tung Lingzi reverted to his true form, and took root in the ground. He could not move, and could only take the attack head-on. More than 100 blood vines tore through the air, and whipped towards Su Zimo. Shatter. Su Zimo descended from the skies with the momentum of plowing the heavens beneath his feet, as though he was plowing a ravine in midair. Exclamation point. More than 10 blood vines were crushed instantly with that stomp. Blood spewed out and splattered on Su Zimo's body. Right then a change happened. Chapter 1428. Suddenly, a blood-colored gourd flew out of Tung Lingzi's body, and spun before arriving above Su Zimo's head. Head down and bottom up. The mouth of the gourd was aimed at Su Zimo and scattered streams of blood light that were filled with a mysterious power. Su Zimo's expression changed. The power that spread out from the mouth of the blood gourd enveloped his body, causing him to lose control of his body and fly towards the blood gourd. Right in front of everyone, Su Zimo's body shrunk continuously and turned into a stream of light that was sucked into the blood gourd. Many mighty figures of the bloodvine race were not surprised by this scene. Ha 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 ha. Tung Lingzi reverted to his human form, and held the blood gourd just now in his palm, as he roared in laughter. Araki Takeshi? Monster incarnate? You're still suppressed by me in the end. Young master, you're wise. You'll definitely be famous in Tianhuang mainland after this battle. That's right. After this battle, even the Protoss like the divine prince and goddess, Xiao Xiang, will be far more famous than you, young master. That Araki Takeshi is arrogant and ignorant. Indeed, the bloodline and physique of our bloodvine race isn't strong. However, he doesn't know that we naturally have powerful killing moves, since we can become one of the primordial 9 races. Many mighty figures of the bloodvine race praised Tung Lingzi loudly. Actually, the blood gourd was extremely important to every bloodvine race. When every bloodvine race member was born, blood gourds would grow on their vines. However, when they entered the conjoint body realm, the blood gourds would fuse into one. It could be said that the blood gourd contained most of the cultivation and essence of the bloodvine race. Indeed, the melee combat strength of the bloodvine race was not strong. However, if one was stained with the blood of the bloodvine race, they would form a connection with the blood gourd. Once they got close, the blood gourd could suck them in and refine them into blood. Tung Lingzi said proudly, "Araki Takashi is ignorant. Does he really think that I don't have the means to suppress him? Even a half-martial ancestor won't be able to break free from the power of the blood gourd after being stained with my blood. The fortune of the human race has run out. This evildoer of all ages is just so. The young master didn't even put in much effort. It's just an undeserved reputation. We, the primordial races, have been silent for too long. The human race is nothing but food for ants. Do they really think they are the masters of Tianhuang mainland? Haha. Young master, what should we do with the blood food?" A mighty figure of the bloodvine race pointed at the people from the southern dual sect not far away. The battle broke out too quickly, and Tang Shuryan was still trying to persuade them. Just as everyone from southern dual sect was slightly moved, and hope was reignited, they saw Su Zimo being suppressed by Tung Lingzi and sucked into the blood calabash. Everyone from southern dual sect chuckled in self-mockery. They shouldn't have had any extravagant hopes of escaping from this place. Their fates had long been sealed. Tang Shuryan smiled bitterly and sighed. "Of course we'll raise them in captivity again." Tung Lingzi said indifferently, "You're just a bunch of food. You should have the awareness to be treated as food. You still want to escape? Then will young master still eat today?" Someone from the bloodvine race asked. "There's no need." Tung Lingzi's gaze landed on the blood calabash in his palm, and he could not help but laugh. "I won't have to eat for the next period of time. Rumor has it that Araki Takashi is Qinglian's body. If I can refine Araki Takashi, my dermic powers and combat strength will increase exponentially. I might even be able to sense the opportunity to break through and comprehend the power of divine powers. Let us congratulate you in advance, young master." Everyone from the bloodvine race congratulated. "Yes." Tung Lingzi nodded gently and said in a deep voice, "I'm going into seclusion for a year. Don't disturb me during this period of time. As for the blood food, I'll reward them to you guys." "Thank you, young master." Everyone from the bloodvine race was delighted. The blood calabash was scarlet and sinister. All he could see was a sea of blood red. Even though he was sucked in by Tung Lingzi's blood calabash, Su Zimo's expression was still calm without any hint of panic. He released his spirit consciousness and surveyed his surroundings. Although the blood calabash did not look big, there was a space within it. Su Zimo's gaze landed on the inner walls of the blood calabash. One after another, tiny blood scars appeared on it. They were densely packed and crisscrossed, resembling the blood vessels of a human with fresh blood flowing within. According to Tung Lingzi, Ming Zhen should still be in the blood calabash. Why aren't there any traces of him? Su Zimo frowned slightly. Could Ming Zhen have been refined into blood by Tung Lingzi before he could hold on? Su Zimo patrolled around the blood calabash and checked carefully. All of a sudden, his expression changed and his gaze landed on a blood cocoon that was half the height of a person in the corner. Initially, he did not notice the blood cocoon at all. At first glance, it looked like a lump of blood in the blood calabash and was unremarkable without any signs of life. However, Su Zimo's spirit perception was strong. He could sense a faint holy and benevolent aura from the blood cocoon. Although it was weak, he still managed to capture it. In a flash, Su Zimo arrived beside the blood cocoon. The blood cocoon was filled with blood threads that coiled around it tightly, and it was almost impossible to see what was inside. Su Zimo reached out and tugged at it casually, ripping off most of the blood threads. Those blood threads possessed an extremely strong corrosive power. If not for the fact that Qinglian's true body had transformed and was reborn, Su Zimo's palm would have been corroded to the bone. There was indeed a monk within the blood cocoon. The monk assumed a lotus position with his palms pressed together. His eyes were tightly shut, and his body shone faintly. He was as thin as firewood and most of his flesh had already dissipated. Su Zimo almost did not dare to recognize him. Right then, the monk opened his eyes and caught sight of Su Zimo. Those eyes were as clear as water, pure and sincere. Even in such a gloomy, terrifying, evil and filthy environment, those eyes still gave people a sense of kindness and beauty. It was Ming Zhen. Su Zimo had only seen such a clear and sincere gaze on Ming Zhen before. Su Zimo's heart ached, and his eyes reddened as he looked at the haggard and bony Ming Zhen. "Junior brother, you're here." Ming Zhen smiled faintly, revealing a heartfelt joy and relief on his face. When he saw that smile, Su Zimo nearly cried. For some reason, he was not enraged or murderous at that moment. He only felt indescribably touched. Ming Zhen had been trapped in the blood gourd for 10 years, and led a life worse than death. If it was anyone else, they would have broken down mentally long ago. Even Su Zimo could not believe what would happen to him after being trapped in such a sinister and filthy environment for 10 whole years. There was a high chance that he would fall into the Fiend Tao completely and activate the Blood Refinement Fiend Sutra, once more to go on a killing spree. However, Ming Zhen did not. Ming Zhen could still smile. There was no resentment or hatred. From Ming Zhen, Su Zimo could sense the supreme benevolence and magnanimity of Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva. As long as hell was not empty, one would not attain Buddhahood. Only by expiating all living beings could one attain Bodhi. Su Zimo's will was as firm as a rock and could not be shaken. However, against such a Buddhist dharma, he was shaken and teared up. Chapter 1429. I'm sorry I'm late. Su Zimo felt guilty. Ming Zhen shook his head and raised his withered palm, as though he wanted to wipe away the tears on Su Zimo's face. However, he had only raised it halfway when Ming Zhen lost his strength, and his arm drooped down weakly. Su Zimo's heart ached when he saw that. He could clearly sense that Ming Zhen's life force was extremely weak. If he was any later, Ming Zhen might not have been able to hold on. Master has passed away. After a moment of silence, Su Zimo decided to tell her about it. I know, Ming Zhen nodded. Su Zimo was slightly stunned and confused. Ming Zhen said, although I was trapped here at that time, I seem to have sensed something. At that point, Ming Zhen paused for a moment and pointed to his chest. It hurts a little here. At that time, I knew that Master had passed away. Even if they were thousands of miles apart, one would be able to sense the death of their kin and bloodline. Ming Zhen's voice was calm. However, beneath that calm voice was immense sorrow. Master passed away peacefully without any pain. Su Zimo said softly. Before he left, he even instructed me to visit you in the southern region. When Monk Yuan Bei said that to Su Zimo, he did not think much of it. Now that he thought about it, Monk Yuan Bei must have sensed something when he instructed him before he left. However, Monk Yuan Bei's lifespan was up, and he could not do anything. Ming Zhen lowered his head slightly. This little monk had a pure and innocent heart. Even though he was in hell, he didn't show the slightest bit of fear or retreat. Even after being trapped here for 10 years and almost dying, his heart was not wavered at all, and he could still maintain his initial heart with a smile. However, at that moment, when he heard the news of Monk Yuan Bei, Ming Zhen lowered his head and pursed his lips without saying a word. Silently, tears streamed down his clothes. Although Ming Zhen tried his best to suppress the sorrow in his heart, he could not control it. Our farewell in the Dragon Burial Valley was an eternal farewell. After a moment, Ming Zhen said softly with a trembling voice. Ming Zhen was different from Su Zimo. Ever since they were sent to the ancient battlefield, Su Zimo had been hunted down by various major sects and factions, and had even returned to the Dragon Burial Valley to seek refuge. However, Ming Zhen never had the chance to return. There were always regrets in life, and some regrets, once missed, would be hard to make up for in a lifetime. Ming Zhen had long sensed the death of Monk Yuan Bei, and was trapped here. All these years, the pain and torture he had endured was even greater than Su Zimo had imagined. A long time later, Mingzhen said, "When I sensed your departure, I stayed here and recited the Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva's original vows sutra, Amitabha Sutra, and rebirth mantra for you. I hope that you can be reborn in paradise without any more pain." Su Zimo was just about to say something to comfort her, when he suddenly sensed something, and his expression changed. Under his gaze, the inner wall of the blood-colored calabash started squirming like a human's stomach and blood seeped out. The blood was extremely evil and surged towards Su Zimo and Mingzhen. Su Zimo reacted extremely quickly. Waving his sleeves, he swept up Mingzhen beside him and leaped into midair. However, there was limited space within the blood calabash. Su Zimo rose continuously with Mingzhen and arrived at the top of the blood calabash in the blink of an eye. The mouth of the calabash was sealed by Tung Lingzi a long time ago. The blood below surged and was rising rapidly. It wouldn't be long before the two of them were drowned. Su Zimo was still all right, but Mingzhen's body was on the verge of collapse. Just now, his mental state was unstable, and he might not be able to withstand the impact of the blood. Su Zimo opened up his consciousness, and a green light flashed. The Creation Lotus platform had descended. Wielding the Creation Qinglian, Su Zimo channeled his blood qi and let out the sound of tsunami waves. Channeling dermic powers, he smashed it down viciously at the mouth of the calabash. Boom! There was a deafening sound. The Creation Lotus platform collided heavily against the mouth of the calabash and produced a tremendous recoil. Su Zimo's arm went numb, but the mouth of the calabash did not budge at all. Boom! 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 Su Zimo smashed the Creation Lotus platform repeatedly with a series of deafening sounds. The entire blood calabash swayed continuously, but the mouth of the calabash showed no signs of loosening. The blood below had already spread upwards. "Junior brother, take this green lamp with you." Right then Mingzhen spoke. "The reason why I was able to survive for 10 years here is partly because of the legacy of Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva, and partly because of the protection of this green lamp. Under normal circumstances, even a half-martial ancestor would not be able to withstand Tung Lingzi's refinement, let alone the Dharma Daojun. The fact that the green lamp could sustain Mingzhen for so long was proof of its strength." Su Zimo swept his gaze. Although the flame on the green lamp was weak in this sealed and filthy environment, it was still burning and emitting a faint glow. It was that faint glow that blocked most of the power of the blood calabash. "Mingzhen, there's no need for that." Su Zimo's expression was cold as he said slowly, "I truly don't believe that a filthy blood calabash as such can devour and refine the Qinglian that possesses the creations of heaven and earth. If it wants to devour the Creation Qinglian, I'll let it do so." Su Zimo channeled his bloodline to its limits, and his figure seemed to have vanished. In the churning blood, a flawless green Qinglian grew. The Qinglian was flawless, and was like a treasure of the universe that no filthy and evil beings could approach. The flower bud on the Qinglian bloomed silently. The 7 circles of petals bloomed one after another, emitting a resplendent light that shone with a divine radiance. The gigantic green lotus platform supported Mingzhen, and the 63 lotus holes shone with resplendent light, nourishing Mingzhen's flesh and essence spirit. The blood surged, but it could not approach the Creation Qinglian at all. Swoosh! The Creation Qinglian swayed gently, and its body expanded. As though it wanted to break through the world, it soared into the skies with an unstoppable might. 6-Star Mountain. Many mighty figures of the Blood Vine race had just reared everyone from Southern Dual Sect, and were instructing their subordinates to clean up the battlefield. After all, although the battle ended quickly, however, the fire had burned the 6-Star Mountain beyond recognition. Apart from the 6 main peaks that were intact, the rest of the place was charred. The Bloodvine race suffered heavy losses as well. There were more than 10,000 Bloodvine race members stationed at 6-Star Mountain, and more than half of them were lost in the fire. Prior to this, the Bloodvine race had already viewed this place as their territory, and even some low-level Bloodvines had begun to migrate over. To think that the fire would burn all the low-level Bloodvines to ashes. Tung Lingzi descended on 7 Kills Peak, and had just channeled his bloodline to refine the blood calabash while walking towards his seclusion grounds. All of a sudden, The blood calabash in his palm swayed. Tung Lingzi chuckled with a mocking expression. You want to come out after entering my blood calabash? Before long. The blood calabash swayed repeatedly. However, it was useless. Tung Lingzi merely supported it gently, and the blood calabash could not fall. Continue struggling. You'll give up when you're tired. Tung Lingzi smiled gently. All of a sudden, as though he sensed something, Tung Lingzi's eyes widened and his smile froze on his face. Chapter 1430. Crack, crack, crack. A chilling sound echoed in Tung Lingzi's ears, as though something had cracked. Tung Lingzi's eyes widened as he turned around slowly and looked at the blood gourd in his palm in disbelief. His pupils constricted as he gasped. To his horror, he discovered that cracks had appeared on the natal dermic artifact that had accompanied him since birth. Although they were minute, they were clearly visible. Furthermore, the minute cracks were spreading at a speed visible to the naked eye. In the blink of an eye, they covered the entire blood gourd. Teat this, Tung Lingzi panicked and shrieked with a trembling voice. That's impossible. How could my destiny dermic weapon be shattered? Araki Takashi is merely a body of flesh and blood. How is that possible? Tung Lingzi was wrong about something. Right now, Su Zimo could no longer be considered as a body of flesh and blood. He was a complete grade 7 creation Qinglian. The creation Qinglian was born in the chaos and possessed the creations of heaven and earth. It was immortal and flawless with boundless life force. Even the blood vine race of the primordial 9 races could not refine the creation Qinglian. Snap! A strange sound echoed in Tung Lingzi's ears once more. His gaze froze. A gigantic crack had already appeared on the blood gourd. In fact, streaks of green light shone through the crack in a bedazzling manner. Boom! It was accompanied by a deafening bang. The blood gourd exploded, and a gigantic Qinglian soared into the skies of 7 Kills Peak. It flickered with light, and emitted a powerful might that looked down on all living beings. The blood gourd exploded, and Tung Lingzi's entire arm was blown apart with flesh and blood spewing everywhere. Ah! Tung Lingzi shrieked tragically, and was sent flying heavily. His face was pale as he spat out a mouthful of blood, and looked dispirited. It was nothing much for his arm to be broken. At most, he would be able to regrow it in the blink of an eye after expending some dermic powers. However, most of the blood vine race's cultivation was on the blood gourd. Now that his destiny dermic weapon was destroyed, it was equivalent to his cultivation being crippled and his combat strength being reduced. It's over. His future cultivation, his past glory, and his current status were all gone. In the Bloodvine clan, it was unknown how many clansmen coveted the position of young patriarch. Now, his destiny weapon had shattered and his cultivation was crippled by more than half. So he didn't have the qualifications to become the young master of the Bloodvine race any longer. This was a huge blow to him. The commotion immediately attracted countless gazes. Many mighty figures of the Bloodvine race looked at the creation Qinglian on 7 Kills Peak with shocked expressions, and a hint of fear flashed through their eyes. The Bloodvine race was a type of plant after all, although it was incomparably domineering. In front of a powerful life form like Qinglian, it was still a level lower. Creation Qinglian could even seize the creation of heaven and earth. If she dared to seize it, a mere Bloodvine race was nothing to her. What are you waiting for? Tung Lingzi roared. Kill him. He's Araki Takashi. Many mighty figures of the Bloodvine race reacted, and moved one after another, charging towards the 7 Kills Peak. Tung Lingzi, you trapped my senior brother for 10 years and slaughtered hundreds of thousands of cultivators. Today, I'll make you pay with your life. Su Zimo's voice sounded coldly. How dare you? At that instant, a roar could be heard from the 7 Kills Peak. A shuddering aura burst forth suddenly, and descended upon the creation Qinglian, wanting to suppress it. Half-martial ancestor. The birth of the creation Qinglian finally alarmed the Bloodvine half-martial ancestor. Actually, the Bloodvine half-martial ancestor had already noticed Su Zimo before this. However, Su Zimo was sucked into Tung Lingzi's blood calabash, and suppressed the moment the battle began. As such, there was naturally no need for the Bloodvine half-martial ancestor to appear. But now the situation was different. Although Tung Lingzi was severely injured, he was still the young master of the Bloodvine race. There was no way the Bloodvine half-martial ancestor would allow Su Zimo to kill the young master of a race right under his nose. Bang! 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 Apart from the 7 Kills Peak, Tianfu Peak, Tianliang Peak, Tianji Peak, Tiantong Peak, Tianxiang Peak, and the other 5 main peaks also emitted powerful auras. There were actually 6 Bloodvine race half-martial ancestors guarding 6-Star Mountain. Su Zimo's heart skipped a beat. The situation was worse than he had imagined. Actually, if there were only 1 or 2 Bloodvine half-martial ancestors, Su Zimo was confident of fighting them with his transformed Qinglian's true body and many powerful trump cards. In fact, he could even suppress them. However, it would be difficult for him to fight against 6 half-martial ancestors, 50 conjoint body mighty figures, and thousands of void reversions such as the Dharma Daojun. Unless the Dragon Phoenix's true body descended. That did not mean that the Dragon Phoenix's true body was much stronger than the current Qinglian's true body. Instead, the many secret skills of the Dragon Phoenix's true body countered the Bloodvine race the most. Be it the Dragon Phoenix Flames or Baron, they were extremely lethal against the Bloodvine race. In the blink of an eye, Su Zimo determined the situation. Today, wanting to rely on the Green Lotus true body to annihilate all these Bloodvine race was no different than a fool's dream. It was already extremely fortunate for him to be able to escape with Ming Zhen and everyone else from Southern Dual Sect. However, no matter what, Tung Lingzi had to be killed. This was the prime evil. The suppression of half-martial ancestor 6 Paths spirit consciousness enveloped down, wanting to suppress the creation Qinglian. The half-martial ancestors of the other 5 peaks had already appeared and were heading over. As for the half-martial ancestor of 7 Kills Peak, he had already appeared on the peak. Ha 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 ha. When he saw that, Tung Lingzi burst into laughter and shouted with a shrill expression, "Araki Takashi, you won't be able to live even if you cripple my destiny dermic weapon. I'll kill you first then." Su Zimo channeled his bloodline phenomenon, and the creation Qinglian flickered with light, releasing a tremendous power that repelled the spirit consciousnesses of the 6 half-martial ancestors. "Araki Takashi, how dare you?" The half-martial ancestor of 7 Kills Peak hollered with a sharp expression. "Even if the patriarch descends today, he won't be able to save you." Su Zimo glared at Tung Lingzi coldly and said, "Hand over your life." Boom! The creation Qinglian flickered, and the void trembled as cracks extended towards Tung Lingzi. Tung Lingzi's combat strength was reduced, and he could not dodge at all. Knowing that he was going to die, a vicious glint flashed through his eyes. With a crazed expression, he took out a blood-red badge from his storage bag and threw it towards Su Zimo. It was the Bloodvine race's killing token. The killing token was not an impressive dermic weapon. The creation Qinglian's lotus leaf slashed gently and sliced the killing token into 2. However, at the same time, the killing token released a strange power that descended on Su Zimo. Su Zimo wanted to take a closer look, but that power vanished all of a sudden. It was as though just now was just his imagination. Furthermore, he did not feel anything wrong with his body. "Araki Takashi, you won't be able to escape. You'll be hunted down by the Bloodvine race for the rest of your life until you die." Ha 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 ha. Tung Lingzi's tragic laughter sounded. The power of the creation Qinglian had descended. Boom! It was accompanied by a deafening sound. Right in front of everyone, Tung Lingzi exploded like a blood calabash, just now, and a blood mist spewed out, dyeing the peak red. His essence spirit could not escape, and turned into nothingness. The young master of the Bloodvine race was dead. Chapter 1431. Araki Takashi, I'm going to tear you into pieces and grind your bones to dust. When he saw that, the mighty figure of the Bloodvine race of 7 Kills Peak snarled coldly with a dark expression. Su Zimo could not withstand the attack either, and reverted to his human form. He descended from midair, panting slightly with sweat on his forehead. He had to withstand the pressure of 6 half-martial ancestors' spirit consciousnesses to attack this time round. After all, He had just advanced to the conjoint body realm. Such a consumption was way too great for an early-stage conjoint body mighty figure. From the moment Su Zimo entered 6-Star Mountain and released the Kacharati Dao fire to now, he had to withstand 6 half-martial ancestors to kill Tung Lingzi. His essence spirit was severely depleted. If not for the fact that the Creation Lotus platform was nourishing his essence spirit continuously, he would not have been able to withstand such an intense consumption. When he saw the 6 half-martial ancestors and 50 mighty figures of the Bloodvine race surrounding him, Su Zimo made up his mind. He could not stay here for long. If he continued fighting with the Bloodvine race, there was a high chance that he would die here. Once he left this place and recuperated, he could make a comeback. Furthermore, although he could not sense anything amiss with the killing token that Tung Lingzi sent to him before his death, it was truly strange. There was a high chance that the killing token was a hidden danger that could erupt at any moment. 50 mighty figures had already arrived. The Bloodvine race's half-martial ancestors of the other 5 peaks had arrived on 7 Kills Peak as well. 6 half-martial ancestors and 50 mighty figures surrounded 7 Kills Peak so tightly that even a mosquito would not be able to fly out, let alone a living person. With a calm expression, Su Zimo slapped his storage bag and took out a wrinkled beast skin with mysterious formation patterns etched on it. It was a teleportation formation from the primordial era. Once activated, it could teleport Su Zimo billions of kilometers away. Of course, the teleportation formation was incomplete, and the location of the teleportation could not be fixed, and was rather random. Su Zimo was prepared to send Mingjun away first. He would hold out for a moment before finding an opportunity to teleport away with everyone from Southern Dual Sect. As long as Mingjun could leave this place, given his cultivation realm, the legacy of Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva, and the green lamp, he would definitely be able to recover. Su Zimo, who was supporting Mingjun, could clearly sense that Mingjun's aura had become unstable. This was a sign that he was about to break through. Mingjun was originally only at the Dharma characteristic realm. However, in order to save the people of the Southern Dual Sect, he came alone and was suppressed in the blood gourd by Tung Lingzi for 10 whole years. For the past 10 years, Mingjun had been constantly resisting the blood gourd. As long as he relaxed, he would be refined into a pool of blood. As long as he could not withstand it, he would die. No amount of pressure could compare to this situation. Under such immense pressure, Mingjun managed to break free. The suffering he had endured for the past 10 years had finally turned into the source of power for his breakthrough. Furthermore, Mingjun's trip was filled with the benevolence, magnanimity and boldness of Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva. If nothing went wrong, Mingjun would definitely step into the body integration stage. As such, Su Zimo had to teleport Mingjun away first. Not good. Araki Takashi is trying to escape. Hurry and seal the space. It's too late. The half-martial ancestor of the Bloodvine race vaguely realized something when he saw Su Zimo take out the beast hide. However, by the time they reacted, Su Zimo had already activated the teleportation formation on the beast hide. The formation patterns on the beast hide shone brightly and emanated a mysterious energy fluctuation. Suddenly, Su Zimo's expression changed. The incomplete teleportation formation on the beast hide was already fully activated. Rich dermic powers lingered around the beast hide as well. However, they seemed to be obstructed by a powerful force and could not condense. Su Zimo had experienced this phenomenon once before. Back in Heaven and Earth Valley. In order to kill him, the experts of the primordial races captured the night spirit and set up an inescapable trap. In fact, they even sealed the space in advance. Later on, if Monk Daming had not made a move in secret, Qinglian's true body, the true bodies of the dragons and the night spirit would have died in Heaven and Earth Valley. But now, the space in the vicinity of 6-Star Mountain was sealed as well. Su Zimo had suffered as such before. Therefore, when he first arrived at 6-Star Mountain, he had already checked beforehand and confirmed that the space in the vicinity was not sealed. In other words, someone had made use of this short period of time to seal the space in the vicinity from the moment he charged up 6-Star Mountain until now. The situation took a turn for the worse, and this was the first time Su Zimo was out of his control. Given his capabilities, he could definitely find the spatial node and break through the seal given enough time. However, given the current situation, there was no way the half-martial ancestor mighty figures of the Bloodvine race would give him the time and opportunity to do so. Since he could not escape, he could only fight head-on. "Everyone, you're truly capable." Su Zimo grit his teeth and said coldly before putting away the beast hide. The 6 half-martial ancestors exchanged glances with a hint of shock and confusion in each of their eyes. It was as though the 6 half-martial ancestors of the Bloodvine race did not know who sealed the space in this place either. Could it be that it's not the 6 of them? Su Zimo frowned and looked at the mighty figures of the Bloodvine race around him. Could it be that some great figure of the Bloodvine race could predict the future and predicted his ability in advance, so he sealed off the space? That was not impossible. After all, he relied on the teleportation formation on the beast hide to leave in the Battle of Heaven and Earth Valley. It was only logical that someone would think of this beforehand. However, Su Zimo swept his gaze across the crowd. None of the mighty figures of the Bloodvine race stood out with a smug expression. Su Zimo's heart sank. Could it be that the one who sealed the space in 6-Star Mountain was not the 6 half-martial ancestors of the Bloodvine race, or the 50 mighty figures, but someone else? If that was the case, that would be terrifying. This meant that there was another expert hidden on 6-Star Mountain that even escaped his senses. On top of that, this powerhouse had predicted what he was going to do and made a move in secret. He directly cut off his path of retreat and sealed off all possibilities. Su Zimo felt chills run down his spine, and his body turned cold. That was the true enemy. He controlled everything without showing himself. Could there be a Mahayana patriarch of the Bloodvine race hidden on 6-Star Mountain? Impossible. Su Zimo rejected that speculation before long. If a Mahayana patriarch was here, he would be suppressed with a single finger. How could he watch him kill the young master of the Bloodvine race? Who could that person be? Just as Su Zimo's imagination was running wild, the 6 half-martial ancestors and 50 mighty figures of the Bloodvine race relaxed as well. Although they did not know who sealed the space here, it was not a bad thing. At the very least, they had cut off Araki Takeshi's escape route. Ha 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 ha. A half-martial ancestor of the Bloodvine race could not help but laugh. Araki Takeshi, oh Araki Takeshi, you've schemed but you're still one step behind. Araki Takeshi, you're destined for this calamity. You won't be able to escape today even if you have wings. Chapter 1432. Junior brother, put me down. Don't bother about me. Mingjun said softly when he realized the danger of the current situation. Su Zimo did as he was told and placed Mingjun down carefully not far away from him. At that moment, Mingjun was already haggard and skinny after being refined by Tunglingzi for 10 years. He sat there in a lotus position like a skeleton that could fall apart with a single gust of wind. Junior brother, don't worry and go fight. After saying that, Mingjun closed his eyes. 7 kills peak. Su Zimo surveyed the experts of the Bloodvine race with a fearless expression. His eyes shone brightly as he shouted, "Come, let me see what capabilities a half-martial ancestor of the Bloodvine race has." How arrogant of an ant! A mighty figure of the Bloodvine race hollered and tossed the blood gourd in his hands. It spun and flew towards Su Zimo. Su Zimo sneered and slashed gently in the direction of the mighty figure of the Bloodvine race with his sword fingers. Chi! A white sword chi burst forth in a bedazzling manner with an endless sharpness, as though it could tear the void into two. Although the blood gourd was the destiny-dermic weapon of the mighty figure of the Bloodvine race, it could not defend against the sharpness of the heaven-slaying sword chi. It was sliced into two by a single slash. The remnant might of the sword chi did not stop. Under the horrified gaze of the mighty figure of the Bloodvine race, it turned into a cold beam of light and entered his glabella. Even patriarchs would not be able to survive the sharpness of the heaven-slaying sword chi once it entered one's consciousness, let alone mighty figures. A blood mark appeared on the glabella of the mighty figure of the Bloodvine race. His expression was dim, and his eyes were lifeless. His head tilted and he fell from midair. He was already dead. The mighty figures of the Bloodvine race were in an uproar. Even the 6 half-martial ancestors of the Bloodvine race frowned. To think that you would have obtained the sword art that was passed down from the upper world. The Bloodvine half-martial ancestor of 7 kills Peak said coldly. Let's not waste time talking to him. Let's join forces and kill him lest anything unexpected happens. The mighty figure of the Bloodvine race that walked out of Tianfu Peak said, and attacked right away. A bloody wind howled and a rain of blood descended. The 6 half-martial ancestors of the Bloodvine race attacked at practically the exact same moment, and they executed the Bloodvine race's secret technique. The rain of blood was even more powerful and evil in the hands of a half-martial ancestor. 6 fishy winds gathered around Su Zimo. Filthy blood rained down on Su Zimo's body. Su Zimo activated his bloodline, and rays of multicolored light spread out from his body. His hand formed the immovable fundamental seal, and he chanted Sanskrit to resist this secret technique. Just now, he had broken through Tung Lingzi's blood gourd and summoned his bloodline avatar. At that moment, without the support of the bloodline phenomenon, Su Zimo had a tough time defending against the power of the 6 half-martial ancestors. The other dozens of mighty figures of the Bloodvine race reverted to their true forms one after another and took root, extending thousands of blood-colored vines that coiled towards Su Zimo. The bloody mouths of the blood vines bared their sharp fangs, wanting to tear off a piece of flesh from Su Zimo's body. Su Zimo was Qinglian's body, and his flesh was extremely nourishing for them. If they could bite off a piece of flesh, they might even be able to break through. If there were only 50 mighty figures of the Bloodvine race, they would not pose much of a threat to Su Zimo. However, against the attacks of 6 half-martial ancestors, Su Zimo's spirit consciousness and dermic powers were greatly affected and suppressed. Right now, the thousands of blood vines coiled over and sealed Su Zimo's entire space. The combat strength of every single blood vine of a mighty figure of the Bloodvine race was equivalent to a grand demon. This was equivalent to thousands of grand demons attacking Su Zimo in a frenzy. Furthermore, the blood vines were much more bloodthirsty and ferocious than grand demons. Sandstorm. Avicii Hell. See Burial Secret Skill. Great Mighty Heavenly Dragon Expiation Art. Su Zimo channeled his dermic powers to his limits and released dermic arts one after another to fight against the experts of the Bloodvine race, with the nourishment provided to his essence spirit by the creation of Qinglian. Actually, if Su Zimo was alone, he would not have to fight so hard in this battle. Given his movement technique and speed, he could definitely kill his way out of the encirclement of the 6 half-martial ancestors of the Bloodvine race, and dozens of mighty figures. He could make use of his movement technique to deal with the experts of the Bloodvine race. But now, Ming Zhen was beside him. The moment he left, it would be equivalent to exposing Ming Zhen. Right then a strange fluctuation came from the peak of the mountain. Boom! Suddenly, a heaven and earth dharma characteristic appeared behind Ming Zhen and rose continuously. In the blink of an eye, it grew to a height of 90 feet. A supreme dharma characteristic. The dharma characteristic emitted a powerful and sacred Buddhist light and suppressed countless vengeful spirits beneath it. That was Ming Zhen's Ksitigarbha dermic body. At that moment, Ming Zhen was attempting to fuse the Ksitigarbha dermic body into his body. Ming Zhen was breaking through. Ming Zhen wanted to break through to the conjoint body realm and fight alongside Su Zimo. Fufu. When he saw that, a half-martial ancestor of the Bloodvine race sneered. Even if you break through, you've only just entered the conjoint body realm. You're still an ant. Ming Zhen obtained the legacy of Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva and sat in the blood calabash for 10 years before condensing a supreme dharma characteristic. Someone who could condense a supreme dharma characteristic was definitely a monster incarnate. Ming Zhen's future accomplishments were limitless as well. However, the half-martial ancestor of the Bloodvine race was right. Even if Ming Zhen could advance to the conjoint body realm, it would not have much of an impact on the entire situation. Su Zimo's Qinglian true body fused with 3 supreme dharma characteristics and had combat strength that far surpassed Ming Zhen's. However, he could not break free and was trapped in a bitter battle. What more Ming-Zhen, who had only fused with a single supreme Dharma body? Bang! 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 The battle continued. Su Zimo's Qinglian true body was indeed terrifying. Even though he was at a complete disadvantage, and was stained by the extremely filthy and evil blood, he was still not greatly affected. His bloodline continued to circulate as usual. However, he did not have much dermic powers left. A battle as such consumed way too much dermic powers. Su Zimo was only at the early stage conjoint body realm after all. Even though his essence spirit was nourished by the creation lotus platform, he could not hold on much longer. As for the 6 half-martial ancestors of the Bloodvine race, they gradually revealed signs of impatience, after failing to take him down after a long time. Go and kill that little monk, a half-martial ancestor of the Bloodvine race said in a deep voice. Leave that Araki Takashi to us. Although that action seemed simple, it was extremely vicious. Ming-Zhen's existence was not a threat to them. However, if a mighty figure of the Bloodvine race targeted Ming-Zhen, Su Zimo would definitely divert some of his attention to protect him. That way, he would not be able to take care of both sides, and the pressure he had to endure would increase exponentially. Swash, swash, swash. The 6 half-martial ancestors of the Bloodvine race summoned their destiny blood gourds, and swiftly arrived above Su Zimo's head with the bottom facing up, and the mouth facing down. Retract! The 6 half-martial ancestors of the Bloodvine race tapped their fingertips gently. The 6 blood gourds released an extremely terrifying suction force. If it was just a single blood gourd, one would not be able to defend against it, and would naturally be sucked in. However, if all 6 blood gourds were released at the same time, it would be equivalent to 6 powers augmenting Su Zimo and tearing his Qinglian true body apart. Su Zimo froze on the spot and could not move at all. He could not help but roar when he felt an intense pain. It was as though his body was about to be torn into pieces by the 6 powers. This was no longer a dermic art. The 6 half-martial ancestors of the Bloodvine race had used their divine powers. At the same time, the other dozens of mighty figures of the Bloodvine race had already abandoned Su Zimo temporarily and lunged towards Ming-Zhen. Both of them were in danger at the same time, and their lives were on the line. Chapter 1433. With his life on the line, Su Zimo channeled his essence spirit crazily, and channeled the heaven-slaying sword art, without a care for anything else. Chi, 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 chi. Su Zimo's body burst forth with bedazzling sword chi, that numbered in the thousands and slashed towards the 6 Bloodvine half-martial ancestors, and dozens of conjoint body mighty figures. A single heaven-slaying sword chi was enough to kill a mighty figure of the Bloodvine race. What sort of scene was it to have more than 10,000 heaven-slaying sword chi? Above the firmaments, the stars were in a mess, and the thousands of sword chi stirred the world, almost slicing the void into pieces. Many mighty figures of the Bloodvine race were shocked. What entered their eyes was simply an ocean of sword chi that wanted to devour them without leaving a trace. Even the 6 Bloodvine race half-martial ancestors were shocked, let alone them. The 10,000 heaven-slaying sword chi burst forth and severed the suction power of the 6 blood calabashes almost instantly. The 6 Bloodvine race half-martial ancestors summoned their blood calabashes hurriedly and retreated, channeling their dermic arts to defend against the incoming heaven-slaying sword chi. Even if it was them, they would have to avoid the sharp edge. Clang, clang, clang. The heaven-slaying sword chi slashed against their blood calabashes, and sparks flew everywhere with the sound of metal clashing. White sword scars were left on the half-martial ancestor dermic weapons. The 6 Bloodvine race half-martial ancestors felt their hearts ache. Although their destiny dermic weapons were not too damaged, they would probably have to be nurtured for more than 10 years if they wanted to recover from the sword scars. Poof, poof, poof. In the blink of an eye, half of the thousands of blood-colored vines were severed. Some mighty figures of the Bloodvine race reacted quickly and transformed into their human forms right away, retreating into the distance. Those who were slower were caught up by the subsequent heaven-slaying sword chi and killed on the spot. In just a few breaths, Some mighty figures of the Bloodvine race were already killed on the spot. Araki Takashi, the 6 Bloodvine race half-martial ancestors, were enraged when they saw that. The 6 half-martial ancestors channeled their dermic powers and summoned their destiny blood calabashes, pouring out a large amount of blood water that formed an evil and filthy sea of blood that surged towards the heaven-slaying sword chi. The sea of sword chi and blood seas collided. 2 completely different forces were corroding each other. The sword chi was sharp and sharp, cutting the sea of blood into pieces. But in the blink of an eye, the sea of blood returned to normal. After dozens of breaths, the sword chi gradually weakened. In the end, it was drowned within the sea of blood that the 6 Bloodvine race's half-martial ancestors had jointly erupted with, and it transformed into nothingness. The curtains fell on the great battle, and it was incomparably bitter. The entire 7 Kills Peak was a bloody mess. Suzumo's face was pale, and he was drenched in sweat. His essence spirit was already aching faintly. The release of the heaven-slaying sword art this time round had drained all the power of his essence spirit. As for the Bloodvine race, it was even more miserable. The 6 Bloodvine race half-martial ancestors were still fine, as they worked together to neutralize most of the heaven-slaying sword chi. However, some mighty figures of the Bloodvine race reacted slightly slower and failed to transform into human form to escape 7 Kills Peak. They were killed on the spot by the heaven-slaying sword chi. There were originally 50 mighty figures, but now there were only 31 left. Furthermore, some of the 31 mighty figures of the Bloodvine race were injured and had yet to recover from the shock. Araki Takashi, well done. The Bloodvine half-martial ancestor of 7 Kills Peak had a cold expression as he said slowly, "Ever since the ancient war, there hasn't been an alien race that can kill so many of our Bloodvine race. You're the first. Even if I tear you into pieces and grind your bones to dust, it won't be able to resolve the hatred in my heart and your sins." Another Bloodvine half-martial ancestor hollered as well. The Bloodvine mighty figure of Tianfu Peak said coldly, "In my opinion, we should imprison his essence spirit and torture him day and night with the harshest punishment. His body has to be suppressed as well, and he can't reincarnate or enter the cycle of reincarnation for all eternity. Suppressing all lifetimes and not entering the cycle of reincarnation. To a cultivator, this could be said to be the most vicious punishment." Suzumo's expression was cold, and he did not say anything. He was not afraid of suppressing all lifetimes and not entering the cycle of reincarnation at all. Qingyuan's true body was like a clone. He had 2 other true bodies. By the time Wu Dao's true body and Dragon Phoenix's true body matured, the Bloodvine race would have to pay the price. However, Suzumo still felt extremely guilty. After all, he did not manage to save the cultivators of Southern Dual Sect from the abyss of misery or protect Mingzhen. Right then, there was a commotion from the Bloodvine race. "Elder Songshi, something doesn't seem right." A mighty figure of the Bloodvine race pointed in the direction of Suzumo and said to the Bloodvine half-martial ancestor of 7 Kills Peak with a bewildered expression, "What is it? Speak clearly." Elder Songshi glanced at Suzumo and could not help but frown as he hollered when he did not notice anything amiss. That little monk is gone." The mighty figure of the Bloodvine race stammered with a confused expression, "Ah, he's indeed gone. How could that be?" The other mighty figures of the Bloodvine race noticed this as well. The gazes of Elder Songshi and the other Bloodvine half-martial ancestors narrowed, and their expressions changed. True enough. On 7 Kills Peak, the little monk who was initially seated cross-legged beside Suzumo had vanished. The 6 half-martial ancestors immediately released their spirit consciousnesses and searched every single corner of 7 Kills Peak carefully. However, they could not find Mingzhen. It was as though he had vanished into thin air. How is that possible? Such a big, living person actually disappeared right under their noses? "Araki Takashi, where did you hide that little monk?" Elder Songshi asked sternly. At that moment, Suzumo was shocked as well. Everyone from the Bloodvine race thought that Mingzhen was hidden by him. However, he did not know what was happening just now. He released more than 10,000 heaven-slaying sword chi and fought against many experts of the Bloodvine race. How could he have the energy to hide Mingzhen? It doesn't matter if you don't say. Elder Tsang, she sneered. The space here has already been sealed. That little monk must still be on 6-Star Mountain. I refuse to believe that we can't find a living person. Search. Elder Tsangxi's expression was frosty as he waved his hand and ordered. A blood vine at the side stood on the spot with widened eyes and looked into the distance motionlessly, as though he had seen something unbelievable. What are you standing there for? Hurry and search. Elder Tsangxi questioned. Elder, something's wrong. The mighty figure of the blood vine race pointed into the distance and rubbed his eyes, stammering. Why are the 10,000 blood food over there gone as well? Su Zimo swept his gaze and could not help but be shocked. He was already puzzled by Mingzhen's inexplicable disappearance. But now this scene was even more shocking. There were more than 10,000 Southern Dual Sect cultivators who were initially imprisoned. However, they had vanished into thin air as well. What was going on? Could someone have transferred Mingzhen and the 10,000 Southern Dual Sect cultivators away while he was fighting against the experts of the Bloodvine race? What sort of methods were used to transfer so many living people away, right under the noses of him? The Bloodvine race's half-martial ancestors and mighty figures. One had to know that Mingzhen was right beside him. Right from the beginning, he had not sensed anything at all. Su Zimo was not the only one. Even the Bloodvine race was shocked. I refuse to believe it. Elder Tsangxi's expression darkened as he said slowly, how can so many people vanish into thin air in such a short period of time? Search. There's no need. Right then a voice sounded. It was gentle and calm like a Sanskrit that sounded like a spring breeze. Chapter 1434. A figure walked over from not far away. He wore grayish-white robes and had long hair that draped over his shoulders. That person's long hair covered most of his face, revealing only a single eye. That eye was clear and bright, as though it contained supreme wisdom. A gentle breeze blew, and that person's long hair fluttered slightly, revealing a thin wound on his glabella. It's him. Su Zimo was shocked when he saw who it was. He had never expected that this person would appear here. Monk Daming. Back when they parted ways in the Grand Primordium Ancient Temple, Su Zimo had never seen this person again. However, there was a high chance that the person who helped him secretly in the Battle of Heaven and Earth Valley was Monk Daming. Although Monk Daming did not appear, he was the final beneficiary of that battle. All the arrangements of heavenly secrets were made for Monk Daming, be it the Grand Primordium Ancient Temple or the layout of Heaven and Earth Valley. They all displayed Monk Daming's extremely powerful intelligence and strategy. Even Su Zimo was impressed by his control and judgment of the situation. Heaven and Earth Valley schemed against all the experts in the world, and even the primordial races could not escape. Strictly speaking, even Su Zimo's two true bodies and Night Spirit were pawns in Monk Daming's trap. Nobody could escape from his schemes. If the disappearance of Mingzhen and everyone from Southern Dual Sect was caused by Monk Daming, it would not be surprising. When Monk Daming was at the Dharma characteristic realm, he cultivated 4 supreme Dharma characteristics that were unprecedented and unprecedented. Even Su Zimo could not compare to him. Although Qinglian's true body could condense 3 supreme Dharma characteristics, and even fuse them to reach a height of 99 feet, it was still unknown who was stronger compared to 4 supreme Dharma characteristics. A few years ago, Monk Daming was only at the perfected Dharma characteristic realm, in the Grand Primordium Ancient Temple. Now that they met again, Monk Daming had already cultivated to the perfected conjoint body realm. Su Zimo's cultivation speed was already extremely terrifying. However, he was still inferior to Monk Daming. It was clear that Monk Daming had benefited way too much from the Battle of Heaven and Earth Valley. After refining and absorbing the blood of so many experts, and even the bloodlines of the primordial races, Daming Temple's cultivation would definitely improve in a short period of time. Back in the Grand Primordium Ancient Temple, Su Zimo had fought briefly with Monk Daming. Complete defeat. And now, Su Zimo had obtained many great opportunities, and even Qinglian's true body had been reborn, growing into a grade 7 Qinglian. However, when he saw Monk Daming again, Suzimo still felt that he was unfathomable. Even if he was in his peak condition, he still did not have much confidence in defeating Monk Daming. Most importantly, Monk Daming was still suppressing him in terms of cultivation realm. What is he doing here? The Southern Dual Sect and Mingzhen were saved by him? Was he the one who sealed the space on the 6-star mountain? What is the purpose of sealing the space? Upon seeing Monk Daming, many questions arose in Suzimo's heart. Who are you? When he saw who it was, the half-martial ancestor of the Bloodvine race, Elder Songshi, frowned slightly and asked slowly with narrowed eyes. The mighty figure of Tianfu Peak of the Bloodvine race sneered with a mocking expression. Why? Are you here to die as a conjoint body mighty figure? I don't believe it. A mighty figure of the Bloodvine race could not hold it in any longer and said coldly, I can't kill Araki Takashi, but can't I kill you? Before he finished his sentence, the mighty figure of the Bloodvine race attacked brazenly. One after another, blood vines burst forth from his body and coiled towards Monk Daming. Monk Daming had a calm expression and gentle gaze as he reached out and grabbed the mighty figure of the Bloodvine race through the void. The mighty figure of the Bloodvine race froze on the spot, as though he was restrained by some power and could not move at all. Thereafter, in front of everyone, the body of the mighty figure of the Bloodvine race exploded instantly, and his flesh splattered everywhere. His essence spirit was destroyed and he died. A single move. Monk Daming did not even manage to touch the body of the mighty figure of the Bloodvine race. He merely grabbed from afar, and the mighty figure of the Bloodvine race was destroyed. Many mighty figures of the Bloodvine race were shocked and hurriedly summoned their destiny-dermic weapons. They gripped talismans and were wary. Even the expressions of Elder Songshi and the other half-martial ancestors changed. Given the capabilities of a half-martial ancestor, they could naturally kill mighty figures with ease. However, this person was only a conjoint body mighty figure. Wasn't it way too easy for him to kill someone of the same cultivation realm? Suzimo shook his head with a mocking expression. That mighty figure of the Bloodvine race did not know what was good for him and challenged Monk Daming. Even he did not dare to say that he could win against Monk Daming, let alone others. Who are you? Elder Songshi hollered. Araki Takashi has already been ordered to be killed by our Bloodvine race. If you don't leave, the Bloodvine race will definitely not rest until you're dead. If you guys die, who will know that I was the one who did it? Monk Daming replied with a question of his own. Haha. Elder Songshi burst into laughter, as though he had heard the greatest joke in the world. Why? You want to kill all of us here? Apart from the 6 of us half-martial ancestors, there are more than 30 conjoint body mighty figures, and thousands of void reversions of the Bloodvine race here. Dharma Daojun, how many of them can you kill? Since I'm going to attack, all of you will naturally have to die. Monk Daming's tone was calm and gentle, as though he was narrating a fact. However, every word he said was filled with killing intent. You. Another half-martial ancestor of the Bloodvine race sneered. Even Suzimo was doubtful that Monk Daming wanted to kill all the Bloodvine race here. There were still thousands of Bloodvine race here, but Monk Daming was alone. Even if his combat strength was torrential, he might not be able to take down all the Bloodvine race. Furthermore, if the half-martial ancestors of the Bloodvine race saw that the situation was amiss and fled in different directions, Monk Daming would not be able to kill them all. Right at that moment, Monk Daming also smiled. He said, Why else do you all think I sealed off the space of this place? Suzimo's heart skipped a beat. Indeed, Monk Daming was the one who sealed the space. However, Monk Daming did not seal the space to target him. Instead, he wanted to kill all the Bloodvine race here. Such methods, such boldness. When Suzimo thought about it, he realized how terrifying Monk Daming was. At that moment, Elder Songshi gradually calmed down as well. He also realized that although the cultivator before him was a conjoint body mighty figure, he was rather troublesome to deal with. Sealing the space meant that they could not even send news out. Good. Elder Songshi nodded repeatedly. To think that apart from Araki Takashi, there's someone like you in the human race. Let's see what you're capable of. As you wish. Monk Daming strode forward and reached out. With a flip of his palm, he descended from the skies and suppressed Eldritch Songshi. Monk Daming's entire palm was covered in a layer of golden light that was bedazzling and shone endlessly. Dong! At the same time, Monk Daming's heart skipped a beat. It was as though someone was beating a heavenly drum in a dull and powerful manner, causing the world to tremble. Thereafter, the sound of a tsunami echoed through Six Star Mountain. Chapter 1435. It was not surprising for Monk Daming to be able to cultivate to the tsunami blood realm. What truly surprised Suzimo was that the technique that Monk Daming released right now was the secret skill of Diamond Monastery, the Diamond Sutra. It was said that when the Diamond Sutra was cultivated to its limits, one could condense a diamond heart. The beating of the heart was akin to a heavenly god beating a drum, and even the world would tremble. With that single beat of the heart, blood chi surged and the power released was extremely ferocious. It could subdue demons and suppress everything. Eldritch Songshi's heart skipped a beat. The white-robed man's attack was way too terrifying. Even he would find it difficult to defend against the torrential power of that attack. Without hesitation, Eldritch Songshi reverted to his true form and took root. The other 5 half-martial ancestors reverted to their true forms as well. The 6 half-martial ancestors attacked at the same time, and hundreds of incomparably thick blood vines tore through the air, coiling towards Monk Daming's descending palm. This could be considered as using gentleness to overcome strength. Although the power released by Monk Daming was strong, the hundreds of blood vines slithered like pythons and coiled around Monk Daming's arm. In the blink of an eye, Monk Daming was drowned by the hundreds of blood vines. Ha ha ha. A half-martial ancestor of the blood vine race burst into laughter. Back then I thought that I was an impressive figure. So this is all there is to it. Don't underestimate him. Kill him with all your might. Eldritch Songshi hollered softly. The hundreds of blood vines wriggled and constricted continuously, wanting to grind Monk Daming, who was the innermost, into meat paste. All of a sudden, the expressions of Eldritch Songshi and the others changed. They felt an intense burning pain, as though they were not trying to kill a person, but a gigantic fireball. Pust! The 6 half-martial ancestors of the blood vine race could not hold it in, and released their blood vines one after another, retreating. Monk Daming's figure reappeared, and his body burned with a layer of flames that emitted an extremely terrifying temperature. When the flames landed on the blood vines of the 6 half-martial ancestors, they burned dozens of vines into a horrifying sight. The Pamkara Monastery's secret skill. Suzimo's gaze narrowed slightly. Monk Daming had just attacked, and he had already used 2 top-tier secret skills of the 2 Buddhist monasteries. Monk Daming had once condensed 4 supreme Dharma characteristics of the Buddhist monasteries. It was not surprising that he had such attainments in Buddhism. Poof! Puff! The reaction of the 6 Bloodvine clan's half-martial ancestors was extremely swift as well. They took the initiative to sever the Bloodvine clan's 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 Bloodvine clan collect. The 6 half-martial ancestors of the Bloodvine race summoned their destiny dermic weapons once more and tossed the 6 blood calabashes above Monk Daming's head. The calabashes faced him and released a terrifying suction force. The 6 suction forces were trying to tear Monk Daming into 2. Monk Daming did not move and formed the immovable fundamental seal with his hands. His glabella shone and an ancient temple appeared, expanding with the wind. Grand Primordium Ancient Temple. It was unknown how many powerhouses were hidden in this ancient temple. Not many people knew that this Grand Primordium Ancient Temple was a person's destiny dermic weapon. This ancient temple was filled with the marks of time. It was ancient and filled with the light of Buddha, as if it brought everyone back to the primordial era. The Grand Primordium Ancient Temple hovered above Monk Daming's head and instantly isolated the power of the 6 blood calabashes, augmenting him. 6 half-martial ancestor dermic artifacts formed a stalemate in the Grand Primordium Ancient Temple. It was impossible for the 6 blood calabashes to tear apart the Grand Primordium Ancient Temple. However, it was extremely difficult for the Grand Primordium Ancient Temple to suppress 6 half-martial ancestor dermic weapons. When they saw that, Elder Zhongxi and the others attacked once more. At the same time, the 30 mighty figures of the Blood Vine race in the surroundings attacked as well. Countless dermic arts descended. Instantly, the weather changed and dermic powers surged, almost piercing through the spot where Monk Daming was standing. Monk Daming's expression was calm as he conjured hand seals with both hands and waved them in midair. He pointed to his surroundings and hollered, "Formless and lawless." The moment he said that, the descending dermic arts dissipated instantly and turned into nothingness. Formless Monastery's secret skill. Su Zimo nodded to himself. Not only did Monk Daming know the top secret skills of the Buddhist monasteries, he had also cultivated them to their limits. 7-floored pagoda. Monk Daming conjured hand seals, and a gigantic 7-floored pagoda descended from the skies, emitting a sacred and flawless Buddhist light. Sanskrit echoed endlessly for a long time. The pagoda seemed to be extremely heavy and suppressed the 6 half-martial ancestors of the Blood Vine race with endless might. Elder Zhongxi and the others reverted to their true forms and took root in the ground. They could not move and could only fight it head-on with dermic arts. Poof, poof, poof. However, the 7-floored pagoda was extremely terrifying and was the best counter against such evil things. The descent of the pagoda crushed at least 100 blood vines and flesh splattered in an extremely tragic manner. As for Elder Zhongxi and the others, they were half-martial ancestors with boundless dermic powers. As they surged, the broken blood vines grew back quickly. "We'll hold him back. Hurry and search for the spatial node to break through the spatial seal of this place." Elder Zhongxi had already realized that the situation was bad and hurriedly ordered the remaining conjoint body mighty figures to disperse and search for the spatial node. As long as they broke through the spatial seal of this place, be it fighting, retreating or sending messages, they would have the initiative. "Are you trying to escape?" Monk Daming shook his head gently. "How is that possible? That's all you're capable of," Elder Zhongxi sneered. "You're dreaming if you want to kill us with that bit of capability." Monk Daming did not argue with him. Suddenly, he took a mysterious step and muttered to himself. He conjured hand seals continuously and released streams of dermic powers into the 6 main peaks. Elder Zhongxi and the others felt their hearts skip a beat, and their expressions were uncertain. Su Zimo sensed something and suddenly looked up. 6 gigantic stars appeared in the firmaments and orbited in a mysterious trajectory. "Those are the 6 stars of the Southern Dipper," Su Zimo murmured softly. The moment he said that, a series of explosions sounded from the 6 stars mountain. Rumble, boom, boom. Terrifying powers burst forth from the 6 main peaks and surged into the skies, connecting with the 6 stars of the Southern Dipper in the firmaments. "That's an array formation." Su Zimo had extremely high attainments in array formations to begin with, and was the first to react. Monk Daming was activating an ancient formation. As for the ancient formation, it was centered around Tianfu Peak, Tianliang Peak, Tianxiang Peak, Tiantong Peak, Heavenly Secrets Peak and 7 Kills Peak. It channeled the power of the 6 stars of the Southern Dipper, and interacted with one another to activate the formation. Suddenly, Monk Daming paused and his eyes lit up like the stars in the skies as he hollered softly. 6 stars of the Southern Dipper formation, activate. Streaks of starlight fell from the skies. Not only did every single streak of starlight contain the might of heaven and earth, their might was also multiplied by the augmentation of the formation. Bang, bang, bang. The starlight landed on the 6 stars mountain and created huge craters. Some of the mighty figures of the Blood Vine race could not dodge in time and were pierced by the starlight, dying on the spot. Even mighty figures of the Blood Vine race could not defend against the power of the starlight, let alone other void reversions. Dharma Daojun, the starlight intensified. Below the 6 stars mountain, whales filled the air and blood flowed like rivers. Chapter 1436. Using the terrain to guide the constellations, the 6 main peaks corresponded to the 6 stars of the Southern Dipper. Coupled with the formation, The might of the 6 stars of the Southern Dipper Formation was unleashed to its limits. The starlight intensified. Initially, Elder Songshi and the other half-martial ancestors of the Bloodvine race could still defend against it. However, the formation, 6 stars mountains terrain, and the constellations in the firmament fused perfectly. As the heavenly cycle circulated, the starlight rained down and increased. Unless someone could break through the formation forcefully, the 6 stars of the Southern Dipper Formation would not stop. Even if it was a battle of attrition, the 6 half-martial ancestors would be exhausted to death. After half an incense stick's time, even the 6 half-martial ancestors were exhausted, and the rest of the Bloodvine race was even worse. There were less than 10 mighty figures of the Bloodvine race left against the 6 stars of the Southern Dipper Formation. More than half of the thousands of Bloodvine race members were dead as well. There were less than 1,000 of them left, and they fled in all directions within the circle of 6 stars mountain to avoid the starlight. However, the starlight was dense like rain, and the space here was sealed. How could they avoid it? In less than 15 minutes, the remaining Bloodvine race, including the few mighty figures of the Bloodvine race, would be buried on 6 stars mountain. Su Zimo lamented when he saw that. Given Monk Daming's combat strength, he might have been able to win against the 6 half-martial ancestors head-on. But he'd chosen an even easier method, and he'd relied on external forces to annihilate all the Bloodvine race here in one go. In fact, Su Zimo suspected that Monk Daming had already arrived a long time ago. However, Monk Daming was waiting for him to fight with the Bloodvine race before he chose to show himself. It was as though everyone was within his calculations, and he did not miss out on anyone. What was the reason for Monk Daming's actions? Was he trying to refine the bloodline of the Bloodvine race on 6 Stars Mountain? Or was it because he wanted to save everyone from Southern Dipper sect out of compassion? Or was it because of the worry-free tree? Or was there some other motive? Su Zimo was unsure. However, no matter what, Monk Daming was on the side of the human race. Although he was fiendish, he was much stronger than most cowardly cultivators. The Pankra Monastery did not dare to cause trouble for the Bloodvine race. However, Monk Daming did. Not only that, he wanted to kill all the Bloodvine race on 6 Stars Mountain. On the battlefield, the 6 Bloodvine race half-martial ancestors were finally unable to hold on any longer, and they transformed back into their human forms, dodged the starlight, and fled towards the distance. If they took root on the ground in the form of the Bloodvine tribe, they would be smashed to death by the endless starlight. Seeing this, Su Zimo shook his head slightly. It was over. If Elder Songshi and the rest were to transform into their human forms, they would die even faster. After transforming into human form, although Elder Songshi and the others had become much more agile in terms of movement techniques, their combat strength had been greatly reduced. Against Monk Daming, they were almost unable to resist. Moreover, the space here was already sealed. It was simply impossible for Elder Songshi to want to break open the space in a short time. However, if Elder Songshi and the others maintained their original forms, they would only be able to hold on for a little longer. This was how terrifying Monk Daming was. He did not give the Bloodvine race any way out. Monk Daming had a calm expression when he saw Elder Songshi and the others take human form. In a flash, he moved at a shocking speed and caught up to a Bloodvine half-martial ancestor in the blink of an eye. It was too fast. Su Zimo had cultivated many escape techniques, such as ground-traversing golden light, and so on. Even after fusing all of them together and releasing them together, he could barely match Monk Daming's speed. Most likely, only the innate divine powers of the golden-winged great rock comprehended by his dragon phoenix true body would be able to surpass Monk Daming. The Bloodvine half-martial ancestor, had clearly not expected Monk Daming to arrive before him so quickly. With a panicked expression, he attacked hurriedly. Blood transformation grand art. The Bloodvine half-martial ancestor hollered and flicked his sharp fingernails. He sliced his wrist and spat out a stream of essence blood that enveloped Monk Daming. That stream of essence blood contained his extremely deep cultivation and could envelop any living being. As long as he channeled his secret skill, he would be able to suck the bloodline of that living being dry. Monk Daming smiled, and a strange sanguine glint flashed through his eyes. All of a sudden, Monk Daming opened his mouth and sucked the stream of essence blood that was gushing over. All of the essence blood surged into Monk Daming's mouth. Not only that, when Monk Daming opened his mouth and sucked, the wound on the wrist of the Bloodvine half-martial ancestor suddenly ruptured and endless blood burst out like a dam bursting. Conjoint body mighty figures could regrow severed arms. Such a small wound healed in the blink of an eye. However, Monk Daming's suction caused the wound to bleed endlessly. In just a few breaths, the face of the Bloodvine half-martial ancestor turned incomparably pale, and his body shriveled rapidly. More than half of his essence blood was sucked away by Monk Daming in a single breath. When he saw that, Su Zimo was enlightened. He could not help but recall the scene when Monk Daming first crawled out of the stone coffin. It was extremely similar to what was happening now. However, the current Monk Daming was much stronger than before. The Bloodvine race is extremely bloodthirsty, and some of their dermic arts are similar to the Blood Refinement Fiend Sutra. Su Zimo lamented internally. However, in terms of bloodline, even a Bloodvine half-martial ancestor can't defend against Monk Daming, who has cultivated the Blood Refinement Fiend Sutra. All of a sudden, a thought flashed through Su Zimo's mind. As though he had thought of something, he narrowed his eyes in deep thought. On the battlefield, the Bloodvine half-martial ancestor was horrified, and his eyes were filled with fear. He had not expected that this person, who was just now proficient in Buddhist Dharma and had a dignified appearance, would turn into a bloodthirsty fiend in the blink of an eye. More than 10 breaths later, the Bloodvine half-martial ancestor's blood chi was sucked away by Monk Daming to the point that he was barely breathing and was almost left with a skeleton. At that moment, the Bloodvine half-martial ancestor could not even conjure his true body. An essence spirit broke free from his body and fled into the distance. Monk Daming took a step forward and caught up with him in a single step. He reached out and trapped the essence spirit in his palm without killing it. Thereafter, Monk Daming did not stop and chased after another Bloodvine half-martial ancestor. There was no way the speed of the Bloodvine race could compare to Daming Monastery. Furthermore, 6-Star Mountain was already sealed. Where else could the other half-martial ancestors escape to? When the Bloodvine half-martial ancestor saw that he could not escape, he turned around and summoned his Destiny Dermic weapon back, smashing it towards Monk Daming. Suddenly, Monk Daming reached out and grabbed the blood calabash. He exerted strength in his palm. Snap! The half-martial ancestor dermic weapon was crushed by Monk Daming. Exclamation point! The essence spirit of the Bloodvine half-martial ancestor shuddered, as though he was struck by lightning, and spat out a mouthful of blood. A scarlet glint flashed in Monk Daming's eyes once more. Splash! The bloodline of the Bloodvine half-martial ancestor surged uncontrollably and seeped out of his pores, surging towards Monk Daming. It was an extremely shocking scene. The bloodline of a half-martial ancestor was forcefully snatched away by Monk Daming using a secret technique. Chapter 1437. In the blink of an eye, the bloodline of the mighty figure of the Bloodvine race was refined and absorbed by Monk Daming as well. A cold glint flashed through Monk Daming's eyes. The head of the mighty figure of the Bloodvine race seemed to have been sliced by something extremely sharp and split into two slowly, revealing the essence spirit within. Monk Daming reached out and captured the essence spirit of the Bloodvine race in his palm, as well before continuing to hunt down the remaining 4 half-martial ancestors of the Bloodvine race. Su Zimo frowned slightly. Monk Daming was definitely not a merciful person. However, there seemed to be a deeper reason why he did not kill the essence spirit of the Bloodvine race's half-martial ancestor. Bang! 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 Elder Songshi and the other 3 half-martial ancestors were attacking wildly, trying to break through the spatial seal of 6-Star Mountain. However, if they could not find the spatial node, they would not be able to break through space with brute force for at least 2 to 3 days. Monk Daming flew through the air with one hand behind his back. The essence spirits of 2 half-martial ancestors of the Bloodvine race were imprisoned in his palm as he strolled over leisurely. Everyone, we can only fight to the death. Elder Song, she said in a deep voice with a terrible expression. The other 3 blood-vine half-martial ancestors swallowed their saliva and nodded as well. They swiftly gathered together and stared at Monk Daming intently with solemn expressions. Fellow Taoist, we don't know you. Why must you be so ruthless? Elder Songxi's tone finally softened. You guys don't know the cultivators here either. Why must you be so ruthless? Monk Daming asked instead. You're different from them. They're just ants. Elder Songxi continued to persuade. The fact that you possess such combat strength after cultivating to the conjoint body realm is enough to earn the respect of the bloodvine race. Oh. Monk Daming did not stop in his tracks and said indifferently. However, you guys are also ants in my eyes. As a primordial race, this was probably the first time the bloodvine race was treated as ants by someone. In this world, there were not many people who had the qualifications and boldness to say such words. Attack! Suddenly Elder Songxi hollered. This short exchange had made him realize that it was impossible to beg this person to let them go. They could only escape if they fought with their lives. Elder Songxi did not release any dermic spells, but released his essence spirit mystic technique directly. The other 3 half-martial ancestors of the bloodvine race had a tacit understanding as well, and released their essence spirit secret skills at the same time. 4 blood-colored gourds formed by primordial spirit secret techniques broke free from the divine consciousnesses of the 4 half-martial progenitors and collided with Monk Daming. Wang. Although the essence spirit secret skills of the 4 half-martial ancestors were released silently, the void trembled. Monk Daming remained motionless, as if he was frozen in place. He allowed the 4 blood gourds to crash into his glabella. Success! The eyes of the bloodvine race's 4 half-martial ancestors lit up, and they were overjoyed. They had not expected that Monk Daming would be struck by their 4 essence spirit secret skills and enter his consciousness, as though he could not react in time. Once an essence soul mystic technique entered the sea of consciousness, it would directly face the essence soul. Even if that person had some sort of essence spirit defensive dermic weapon, it would be difficult for him to defend against the essence spirit secret skills of 4 half-martial ancestors. Suddenly, an extremely terrifying energy fluctuation burst forth from Monk Daming's glabella. A gentle breeze blew the long hair in front of his forehead, revealing a thin blood scar on his glabella. At that moment, the blood scar seemed to have turned even redder, as though a blood-colored eye was about to open. Monk Daming was safe and sound. When the essence spirit secret skills of the 4 half-martial ancestors entered Monk Daming's glabella, they seemed to have been neutralized by the blood scar and vanished into thin air. Su Zima was not surprised by that. Back in the Grand Primordium Ancient Temple, his Qinglian sword had failed to penetrate Monk Daming's glabella. All of a sudden, Su Zima frowned, feeling as though he had missed out on something crucial. Why your heaven? Elder Songxi pointed at Monk Daming and his voice trembled, as though he had discovered something. Monk Daming smiled gently and extended his palm, grabbing gently towards Elder Songxi through the void. Poof! Elder Songxi's body seemed to be squeezed together by a pair of invisible hands and exploded instantly, turning into a blood mist. Elder Songxi's essence spirit was casually restrained by Monk Daming as well. Monk Daming strode forward and arrived beside the 3 half-martial ancestors of the bloodvine race. He merely raised a single arm and slapped down towards the 3 half-martial ancestors. Sensing a life-and-death crisis, the 3 half-martial ancestors of the bloodvine race channeled the dermic powers of their essence spirits and released many talismans, dermic arts and dermic weapons, as though they had gone mad. It was the final struggle of a half-martial ancestor. The physique of Monk Daming, who had fused 4 supreme dharma characteristics, was way too terrifying. Even against the frenzied attacks of the 3 half-martial ancestors of the bloodvine race, he had no intention of dodging or retreating. Channeling his bloodline, the sound of a tsunami surged. Monk Daming's aura was rising rapidly as well. Before long, it broke through a certain threshold. Behind Monk Daming, the phenomenons of the 4 great Vajras glared with fiery gazes and a terrifying might. Bloodline phenomenon. The three half-martial ancestors of the Bloodvine race exclaimed. Their dermic arts were destroyed instantly against the four great Vajras. Right then Su Zimo's gaze narrowed. He could clearly see Monk Daming frowning, and a pained expression appeared on his face. The feeling that Monk Daming gave him was that he was wise, gentle, unfathomable, and expressionless. No matter what kind of pain he was enduring, Monk Daming would most likely not reveal it. Why did Monk Daming feel pain when he was channeling his bloodline phenomenon? All of a sudden, the four great Vajras that had just been condensed behind Monk Daming gradually fused together to form a new phenomenon. Under normal circumstances, the fusion of the four great Vajras should have turned even more sacred and dignified. However, at that moment, after the fusion, a blood-stained figure with torrential fiend chi appeared behind Monk Daming. Roar! The figure's appearance could not be seen, and its features were blurry. It charged towards the three half-martial ancestors of the Bloodvine race, and let out a deafening roar. Monk Daming's eyes were closed and his body was trembling slightly as well, as though he was enduring immense torture. Suddenly, the figure moved and lunged towards the three half-martial ancestors of the Bloodvine race. In midair, it transformed into a gigantic blood-colored human face that opened its mouth and devoured the three half-martial ancestors of the Bloodvine race. The dermic weapons in midair dimmed in the blink of an eye after they were devoured by the blood-colored mouth, and fell from midair into piles of scrap metal. Ah! The three half-martial ancestors of the Bloodvine race shrieked tragically. However, no matter how they resisted, it was useless, and they were still devoured by the blood-colored human face. Gulp! Gulp! The blood-colored human face gulped down mouthfuls of blood. The bodies of the three half-martial ancestors of the Bloodvine race shriveled at a visible speed. Right then, Monk Daming touched his glabella gently and chanted Sanskrit. Suddenly, he opened his eyes and clarity returned to his eyes. His bloodline phenomenon, the blood-colored human face, gradually turned into nothingness as well. In that short period of time, the bloodlines of the three half-martial ancestors of the Bloodvine race were sucked dry, leaving behind only three skeletons and terrified essence spirits. Chapter 1438. Monk Daming stepped forward and imprisoned the essence spirits of the three Bloodvine half-martial ancestors in his palm as well. At that point, the essence spirits of the six Bloodvine half-martial ancestors were imprisoned by Monk Daming. Monk Daming's expression was indifferent as a transparent ball of light appeared in his palm. The essence spirits of Elder Tsang-Shi and the other six Bloodvine half-martial ancestors were imprisoned within. All of a sudden, a pitch-black fiend chi appeared on the surface of the ball of light. As though it possessed sentience, it coiled towards the essence spirits of the six Bloodvine half-martial ancestors. In the blink of an eye, the essence spirits of the six Bloodvine half-martial ancestors were coiled with black fiend chi that shackled them like chains. Soul-searching art! Su Zimo exclaimed. Right now, Monk Daming was releasing the secret skill of the Tao Heart Fiend Seed Sutra, the soul-searching art. In the Tao Inheritance Ground, Su Zimo had once obtained the Green Thunder Manual from Tao Being Zephyr Thunder's memories with that secret skill. From there, he fused it and obtained the complete Great Void Spirit Refinement section. To think that Monk Daming would know of this secret skill of the fiend sex as well. The more he interacted with Monk Daming, the more he could sense how terrifying this person was. In fact, Su Zimo suspected that there was a high chance that Monk Daming was still holding back in terms of combat strength. What is he trying to do? Is he searching the memories of the six Bloodvine half-martial ancestors for some secret or cultivation technique? A hint of confusion flashed through Su Zimo's mind. It was clear that Monk Daming's actions were not done on the spur of the moment. Instead, he had planned it long ago. Right from the beginning, he did not kill any Bloodvine half-martial ancestors. It was all for this moment. The essence spirits of the six Bloodvine half-martial ancestors were withering rapidly. All of a sudden, the essence spirit of a Bloodvine half-martial ancestor exploded, and his essence spirit was destroyed. There was a high chance of failure for the soul-searching art. If the essence spirit of the soul searched resisted continuously and affected the soul-searching process, it would fail. Before long, Elder Songxi's essence spirit exploded as well and he died. The essence spirits of two bloodvine half-martial ancestors were destroyed in a short period of time, and it was clear that Monk Daming did not obtain anything from their memories. However, his expression was calm, without the slightest impatience or frustration. He continued to perform the soul-searching technique. Nothing unexpected happened in the following process. Monk Daming closed his eyes and searched through the memories of the four half-martial ancestors for what he needed. On 7 Kills Peak. In just a short while, Su Zimo's primordial spirit and magic power had recovered significantly. Su Zimo went to the place where Tung Lingzi had fallen. He picked up Tung Lingzi's storage bag from the pile of crimson corpses. Su Zimo activated his divine sense, erased the divine sense imprint on the storage bag, and opened it. There were many elixirs and dermic weapons in the storage bag. In the cultivation world, these items were considered top-notch treasures. However, it was difficult for them to enter Su Zimo's eyes. His physical body was that of a 7th-grade creation Qinglian. What Dharma treasure could compare to a creation Qinglian? Even Tung Lingzi's blood gourd was broken by Qinglian. All of a sudden, Su Zimo focused his gaze on a broken piece of wood. The broken piece of wood looked extremely ancient and was more than 10 feet long. It was as thick as a water bucket and emitted a tremendous life force with a hint of warmth. Furthermore, Su Zimo felt an indescribable sense of intimacy towards the broken piece of wood. If he was not wrong, this should be the carefree wood. The carefree flower had already fused into his body. Therefore, he felt a sense of intimacy towards the carefree wood. Su Zimo sighed emotionally as he looked at the broken piece of wood. It was because of this broken piece of wood that Southern Dual Sect was destroyed and hundreds of thousands of cultivators were buried here with grievances. Right then, Su Zimo sensed something and raised his head. Monk Daming had already completed his soul-searching technique and had a calm expression. Even Su Zimo did not know if Monk Daming had obtained what he needed. Nobody knew what Monk Daming was thinking. Nobody knew what Monk Daming was planning either. After the soul-searching technique, the essence spirits of two bloodvine half-martial ancestors were already dead. As for the essence spirits of the other two bloodvine half-martial ancestors, their gazes were unfocused, and they were delirious. They had lost their memories and were completely dumbfounded. Monk Daming crushed the essence spirits of the two half-martial ancestors with a casual wave of his hand and walked towards 7 Kills Peak. To be fair, Su Zimo had no idea if Monk Daming was good or evil, Buddhist or fiend, friend or foe, righteous or evil right now. He could not be sure either. It was as though good and evil, Buddhist and fiend, righteous and evil were fused together perfectly in this person, without anything out of the ordinary. Although Monk Daming was helping him just now, he would not be surprised if Monk Daming suddenly killed him the next moment. Even so, Su Zimo did not leave. He had many questions in his heart, and he might be able to obtain an answer from Monk Daming. You seem to have many questions. Right then, Monk Daming stepped onto 7 Kills Peak and asked with a fake smile, as though he could see through Su Zimo's thoughts with a wise gaze. Yes. Su Zimo did not hide anything and asked directly in a composed manner. Are you Monk Daming? Everything about Monk Daming's identity was actually just Su Zimo's conjecture. Therefore, he had to confirm it first. I used to be. Monk Daming smiled gently and did not hide anything. That was an admission. Su Zimo nodded and asked again. During the Battle of Heaven and Earth Valley, there was an expert who hid in the dark. Although he did not reveal himself the entire time, he attacked multiple times. That person must be you, right? Yes. Monk Daming smiled. Good move, Su Zimo said. All the experts in the world are within your control without any loopholes. Impressive. After pausing for a moment, Su Zimo continued. But no matter what, it's fortunate that I managed to escape with your help. Thank you very much. It's nothing. I just did it along the way, Monk Daming smiled. It's the same today as well. I'm here because I have other motives, and I'll help you along the way. Oh, Su Zimo raised his brow and suddenly asked, if I'm not wrong, you should have arrived here a long time ago, right? Why did you only appear after I fought the Bloodvine race to the end? Of course, that was easy to explain. Monk Daming wanted to wait for him to fight the Bloodvine race to the end before appearing, so that he could clean up the mess easily. However, Su Zimo had a feeling that that was not Monk Daming's true intentions. Monk Daming must have other motives. True enough. When he heard Su Zimo's question, Monk Daming remained silent for a moment. A moment later he spoke slowly. I wanted to see if you would use the Blood Refinement Fiend Sutra in that desperate situation. What if I used it? Su Zimo narrowed his gaze and asked. I might have killed you. Monk Daming replied indifferently. Su Zimo could sense that Monk Daming was not joking. Chapter 1439. Why? Su Zimo asked. If he was not wrong, Monk Daming's fiend technique had already been cultivated to an extremely terrifying level, and even gave birth to a bloodline phenomenon. In fact, the bloodline phenomenon surpassed Monk Daming's phenomenon of the Buddhist monasteries. Monk Daming wanted to kill him because he used the Blood Refinement Fiend Sutra. That was a ridiculous reason. Monk Daming remained silent for a moment, and did not answer Su Zimo's question directly. Instead, he said meaningfully, just pretend that you've forgotten about that fiend technique. Don't use it no matter what. Even if Monk Daming did not remind him, Su Zimo had already realized that. That was the reason why he did not activate the Blood Refinement Fiend Sutra, even though he was on the brink of death, after leaving Thousand Demon Valley. This fiend technique seems to be similar to the secret skills of the Bloodvine race. Su Zimo asked probingly, as he recalled a terrifying conjecture that had crossed his mind just now. Monk Daming replied, the Blood Refinement Fiend Sutra is derived from the secret skills of the Bloodvine race to begin with. However, the Blood Refinement Fiend Sutra is much stronger than them. Although the Bloodvine race is bloodthirsty, it has to be fresh blood. That's the reason why the Bloodvine race reared the cultivators of Southern Dual Sect in captivity, so that they could ensure that fresh blood would be absorbed and refined at all times. However, the Blood Refinement Fiend Sutra is different. You should know that as well. Su Zimo nodded. The terrifying thing about the Blood Refinement Fiend Sutra was that it could refine all bloodlines for its own use. Even if it was the bloodlines of countless fallen cultivators on the battlefield, it could still refine them and turn them into its own power. Su Zimo glared at Monk Daming and asked again, how did the Blood Demon Tao Lord know about the secret skills of the Bloodvine race back then? I'm sure you've already guessed it given your thoughts. Monk Daming's tone was calm, but he revealed a huge secret. The Blood Demon is half a Bloodvine race member to begin with. He's a remnant of the Bloodvine race. Indeed, Su Zimo had just thought of a possibility. The Blood Demon Tao Lord might be related to the Bloodvine race. To think that the Blood Demon Tao Lord would be a remnant of the Bloodvine race. Is he still alive? Su Zimo finally asked the biggest question in his heart. Monk Daming lowered his head and fell silent. I don't know. A long time later, Monk Daming said softly with a conflicted expression, perhaps. Monk Daming did not seem to want to talk about this matter. He changed the topic and asked, do you have any other questions? Su Zimo knew that given Monk Daming's attitude, he wouldn't be able to get any answers, even if he continued pursuing the matter. Daming Monk Daming Sect Immortal? Daming Su Zimo Immortal is immortal. Daming immortal. Monk Daming said. They're fine. Before this, I used the Grand Primordium Ancient Temple to bring them away from 6-Star Mountain. They should have escaped long ago. Immortal. Imming immortal. IMS immortal. Immortal IMS immortal. IMS a Monk Daming asked with a fake smile and a deep gaze. Su Zimo's heart skipped a beat as he blurted. Mingjun hasn't left at all. He's still here. That's right. Monk Daming nodded and waved his sleeves. Suddenly, ripples appeared in the void around Su Zimo, as though it was water. Gradually, Mingjun's figure appeared. At that moment, Mingjun pursed his lips tightly. He was at the most critical moment of his breakthrough, and his skinny body was drenched in sweat. Nice move. Su Zimo could not help but praise. Actually, Su Zimo had his doubts. It was logical for Monk Daming to be able to teleport everyone from Southern Dual Sect away silently. After all, He was in a huge battle with the Bloodvine race back then. However, the Southern Dual Sect cultivators were kept far away without anyone noticing. That was the reason why Monk Daming was able to bring so many people away from 6-Star Mountain alive. However, Ming Zhen was right beside him, and was right under the noses of many half-martial ancestors and mighty figures of the Bloodvine race. How could Monk Daming have managed to take Ming Zhen away silently? Now Su Zimo was enlightened. Ming Zhen did not leave at all. However, Monk Daming had released an illusion to hide Ming Zhen, while Su Zimo was in a huge battle with the Bloodvine race. Su Zimo had witnessed the brilliance of Monk Daming's illusion techniques in the Grand Primordium Ancient Temple. However, it was still impressive that he could deceive him, the Bloodvine race's half-martial ancestors, and so many mighty figures of the Bloodvine race present. Of course, if Su Zimo and the Bloodvine race's experts had not engaged in a huge battle, Monk Daming would naturally not have had the chance to attack, nor could he have deceived everyone. What's with this 6-star Southern Dual formation? Su Zimo asked. There are 6 half-martial ancestors of the Bloodvine race, guarding the 6-Star Mountain. No matter how powerful you are, it's impossible for you to sneak in stealthily and set up such a mysterious formation without being detected by the half-martial ancestor mighty figures of the Bloodvine race. One had to inscribe formation patterns in advance to set up a formation. This was an extremely massive project that consumed the most mental energy. For example, this 6-star Southern Dual formation could even kill conjoint body mighty figures with ease. It would be difficult to set it up without a year or so. That was also what confused Su Zimo. 6-star Southern Dual formation. Monk Daming's eyes were filled with reminiscence as he said slowly with a sad expression. Southern Dual Sect has a unique terrain. The 6 main peaks are naturally formed and correspond to the constellations in the firmament. 40,000 years ago, the ancestral master of Southern Dual Sect arrived here and established a sect here after discovering the unique terrain. At the mention of the ancestral master of Southern Dual Sect, Monk Daming sighed gently. I had a good relationship with him, and he invited me over. Together, we set up this 6-star Southern Dual formation. It's a pity that his old friend passed away and Southern Dual Sect had no successor. No one in the sect could activate this formation, and it was abandoned from then on. Monk Daming sighed in disappointment. In that case, this formation was indeed set up by Monk Daming. However, it was set up 40,000 years ago. After 40,000 years, Monk Daming revisited his old haunt. However, the place remained the same, but the people had changed. That kind of sadness and disappointment was probably something that no one could understand. Monk Daming was old friends with the ancestral master of Southern Dual Sect. That was probably the reason why he saved everyone from Southern Dual Sect. The 6-star Southern Dual formation doesn't have a formation core. Suddenly Monk Daming asked. I heard that you have some attainments in array formations as well. If you're trapped in the 6-star Southern Dual formation, how are you going to resolve it? Monk Daming's question had a hint of a test. Su Zimo pondered for a moment before replying. The 6-star Southern Dual formation uses the 6 main peaks as a guide to draw upon the power of the constellations in the firmament. On the surface, this formation doesn't have a formation eye. However, in reality, the 6 main peaks are used as formation eyes. As long as you can destroy one of the main peaks, the formation will disintegrate on its own. Good. Monk Daming nodded repeatedly. You truly live up to your reputation as the strongest monster incarnate in history. To begin with, Monk Daming was one of the strongest monster incarnates in history. There was probably no one in the world who could receive such an evaluation from him. In fact, the two of them admired each other in their hearts, and they sympathized with each other. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support. And don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.